April 24th, 2020. It is a freaking hot one out here in Southern California. Hope everyone's doing okay, staying safe, staying smart. I mean, where I am over here in Long Beach, and we're like right across the street from the beach, so we're in an area where it definitely doesn't get that hot. It's in the 90s right now, so whew. I know all of you that are not in Southern California that have like the bad weather are probably like gonna punch me in the face right now. But anyways, if you hear the fans blowing in the background, it's just because it's a hot one, and we have a lot to talk about on this episode of That's What She Said podcast. We're gonna start with a recap of the round one of the NFL draft that was last evening. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Red Sox cheating scandal. Then we'll get you in some horse racing, Gulfstream Park for Saturday, a couple plays, Oaklawn for Saturday, a couple plays, and then a couple plays for Oaklawn Sunday. And then we'll go to Wrestlemania 6 with the Wrestlemania recap back in 1990. Darren Zocali, Andrew Champagne join, and we talk about Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, the last pay-per-view that Jesse the Body Ventura was on commentary. So that's a really fun show. And you can throw it on the WWE Network, kind of kick back and watch along with us as we go back in time. Let's get right on into the NFL draft. So the number one overall pick was the Cincinnati Bengals, and this was no surprise. We knew they were going to go with Joey Burrow here from LSU, who was just so amazing last year, national championship, Heisman Trophy winner, threw for over 5,600 yards, 60 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. I mean, he had one of the, if not the greatest single season that any college player has had. And he, not only just racking up the numbers and the stats, but he won. So they get their quarterback and hopefully their franchise guy. At the number 2 pick, it was the Washington Redskins. They went with Chase Young, and many folks actually thought that Chase Young was the best player in the draft. He was the most talented player in the draft, but you need a quarterback, and you have a guy like Joe Burrow there, you go and get him. This was a good pick for Washington. They grabbed, the best available player there. They have a lot of holes to fill. This is going to really help on their defense. The Detroit Lions were the number 3 pick. There was nothing too crazy about what they did, picking Jeff Okudah from Ohio State. This was a lot of people were projecting that he was going to go early on. They seemed like they liked him quite a bit. They needed some help there to kind of replace Slay, and it looks like he's the type of player who can come in right away and start and help them out on the defensive side of the ball. Andrew Thomas was the first of those big offensive linemen that were taken. There was like a tier of 4 that were the top tier offensive linemen, and Andrew Thomas was the first to go. He went to the New York Giants, and that's what's great about these top 4 linemen that went. They're like ready to rock right now. You can stick them in and play. Once you get back to Austin Jackson, he's more of a little bit of a project. But these first few, they're big boys and they are ready to go, and they can help your offensive line right now. And then with the 5th pick, the Dolphins went with Tua, and this is a good pick for them. I mean, they had a lot of other capital in this draft. A couple of the first round picks. If Tua doesn't work out for you, it's worth the risk is worth it. The reward is worth the risk here with Tua, who, I mean, obviously his issues aren't talent, right? It's injury, it's durability, it's can he stay healthy. When you have a player like that, I think you have to give them a shot. When you know that their ability is there, and he stays healthy, he's probably the number 1 pick, even if they don't win it all. But if they make the playoff, it was just the question marks with him, and he didn't even drop that far, down to 5. Dolphins get Tua. And then the Chargers went with Justin Herbert. This was one that as someone who is a USC fan, who watches a lot of Pac-12 football, who's seen Justin Herbert now, he never really impressed me. I think he's one of those that you look at and he checks a lot of the boxes of what a quarterback should be, but when you really dive into his film and a lot of what he does, I just don't know if he's the guy. And I don't know if I would have taken him at number 6 overall if I'm the Chargers. So the Chargers go with Justin Herbert. The Panthers go with Derek Brown, which was kind of funny because then afterwards they said that they felt that Simmons was their best player available, but that Brown was more of a fit, or that Simmons would be better on a team with more veterans. It was kind of a weird comment. And I have no problem with Derek Brown. He's super dominant. Just seemed like if you're the Panthers, you aren't just a DT away from being super competitive. So I'm just starting to stack best player available. We saw some teams play it very smart when they were able to do that later on in this first round. And then the Cardinals, they were able to get Simmons, the very, very highly regarded, really super versatile defender. I mean, he just lined up all over the place, and he's the type of player who can come in right now and just wherever you need, you just plug him in and play. So that was the number 8 pick for the Arizona Cardinals. At number 9, the Jacksonville Jags took C.J. Henderson. This is a good, smart pick for them. They needed help at the cornerback position. They lost, their stud cornerbacks in the last year and a half or so. He was one of the top-rated players at the position, and very nice fit for them. 10th pick, Cleveland Browns. They, really strengthened their offensive line now. They get Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle. He played on the right side at Alabama, and he's going to probably have to move over to the left side, but it doesn't seem like it should be an issue for this super, super talented big man. At the 11th pick, another offensive tackle goes to the Jets, and that's Mekhi Becton. So they get a little bit of protection there. We're seeing, right, the teams that needed the protection, the Giants, young quarterback, young running back, they get another offensive lineman there with Andrew Thomas. We see it with the Browns, with Baker there, and a lot of offensive weapons. Now they're able to add add in addition to the offensive linemen that they add in free agency. So this could be a strength for them this year. And then the Jets, they needed offensive line help. They get it here to help Sam Darnold. One of the more strange picks, it's not crazy, but most people, when they were talking about the wide receivers in this draft, which is a very deep wide receiver draft, they had Jerry Jeudy and they had CeeDee Lamb as kind of the top two, with Henry Ruggs behind them as more of the speedster. And the Raiders at pick 12, they actually pick Henry Ruggs, and he is, total playmaker type, but is he enough of a possession type guy? He may not be a right away player. He may be a little bit more of need a little bit of time to be able to figure out the NFL versus some of the other top tier wide receivers who look like they could be ready to contribute right now. Tampa Bay moves up to 13 to get an offensive lineman here, and so they get Tristan Wirfs to help protect Tom Brady. They flip-flop with the 49ers, so the 49ers are down at 14. They get Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, so they immediately are able to replace DeForest Buckner right there. I like what the 49ers did quite a bit. They were just smart. They were able to address their needs in this draft. It was a good draft for San Francisco. At pick 15, perhaps the best wide receiver in the draft, you get Jerry Jeudy, who's a really good route runner here, and he is ready to rock and roll right now. He could be an instant contributor and a fantasy option next year. They needed some help there in Denver. They got a big-time wide receiver in Jerry Jeudy. Atlanta, they filled a need. They needed help at the cornerback spot, and they were able to get A.J. Terrell in here. There might have been better options for them, but again, they're filling a need here. I didn't love this pick, but I didn't necessarily hate it. As we move to 17, and this is when Dallas is looking and going, we don't really need a wide receiver, but damn, CeeDee Lamb is still on the board right now, and he was my favorite wide receiver in this draft. I think he's an absolute stud. And now you add him to, Cooper and Gallup. That's a good trio. I think they're just looking and going, you know what, this is the best player available right now. Let's just take him and we'll worry about some needs down the line. Miami took a little bit of a reach with the Trojan offensive tackle Austin Jackson. He's a good project. He's super young. He's still only 20 years old, and he has you look at him and you can project what he could be. So they're young, they're rebuilding. It's not a bad spot for them. They don't necessarily need guys that are going to contribute immediately right away. They want maybe some players that can grow along with their new franchise quarterback, Tua. At number 19, the Raiders picked cornerback Damon Arnett, and he's good. This is a good spot for him. The Raiders filled some of their needs, but the thing is, they went for, it looks like in some spots, particular players that they just liked a little bit better, which is fine. But if it doesn't work out, then you're going to get ridiculed for maybe not taking someone who may have been projected a little bit better in that spot. We get to pick number 20 with Caleb Von Chasen, and the Jags get the edge, explosive speed rusher, and good job of the Jags, just starting to stack talent. That's what they need. They need a lot of help. They get a couple nice pieces on the defensive end. At 21, the Eagles get a wide receiver. We saw how banged up this team was this year at some of the skill positions. They desperately needed one, so they get Jalen Reagor here, who's really quick and can help them stretch the field. And he's kind of coming off of a year where he didn't have a very good quarterback, and so he might be a little sneaky in here. Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver that the Vikings get to fill in for Stephon Diggs. This is a really good pick for the Vikes. He goes across the middle of the field. He's really good in the red zone. He's going to be a major player, like a major contributor right away. At 23, the Chargers trade up, and they get the linebacker Kenneth Murray. And there's nothing wrong with this pick. I wasn't a fan of moving a whole lot in this draft because it's a deep draft. So now you trade up, you end up giving up, a couple of other picks to get Kenneth Murray. I just didn't love it. If you're the Chargers, and it's the typical Patriots move, right? Trading out. The New Orleans Saints get a nice a center here to help their offensive line. He was a very highly ranked top interior lineman on many boards, and he's someone who can maybe plug in right away and help that offensive line and start. The 49ers with pick number 25, they selected wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. He's a total playmaker, really good, like yards after and run after the catch type. He and Deebo Samuel should be great. You plug them along with Kittle. They have some weapons there in San Francisco. I think they did a hell of a good job with their couple picks early in this draft. They're in great shape. And then the pick that made the most noise was at 26, the Green Bay Packers. They have not drafted a skill position, did Rodgers say, like a wide receiver or a running back, like in the first round in 15 years. They get Jordan Love, quarterback. Maybe they're trying to do the same thing that they did with Rodgers when they had Rodgers backing up Favre and then he takes over after a couple years. But this seemed weird. In a draft where you could have grabbed maybe another nice wide receiver, or maybe if you wanted to get a running back, you could have grabbed like any running back off the board. But instead they go with backup quarterback Jordan Love. I don't know about this one. And he didn't really impress me a whole heck of a lot. So that, to me, the only quarterbacks that I really liked in this draft early were Burrow, and then I thought Tua was at least worth taking a shot on, especially in the right circumstance if you're Miami. And then after that, like the next tier, I didn't really love. So if you still want one, then maybe wait for Fromm or Eason or someone like that. At 27, the Seattle Seahawks get one of those players who is just all over the field, linebacker Jordan Brooks. He's going to rack up a ton of tackles. At 28, another linebacker goes to the Baltimore Ravens. Another really, really good one. That's Patrick Queen. And then at 29, the Titans help bolster their offensive line with Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle. And then at 30, the Dolphins, they get cornerback Noah Igbenogany, and he's another one. Like, I like what the Miami Dolphins did here. They take some swings, right? They had a couple drafts here, a couple picks here in the first round, and They get themselves an offensive lineman that they think is going to be really good, maybe not immediately, but a year or two down the line. They get a quarterback who, might still need a little bit of time, but that's fine. They're more worried about the future, and I think they get the same thing here on the defensive side of the ball. Really, really good athlete, and he can kind of just, play center field. This is Igbenogany. Fun name, right? At 31, Jeff Gladney, cornerback, goes to the Minnesota Vikings, so they fill in really nicely. Wide receiver and cornerback. And then at 32, we didn't see this one coming, the Kansas City Chiefs, they get the running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU, who is really good out of the backfield, so he should be great for them, catching passes out of the backfield for Mahomes. And they don't really have a star, right? This guy can run between the tackles too. They have a couple backs there, but he should fill in very, very nicely. So those are your top 32 picks. That's round 1. Next week, we will do a full recap of the draft. We'll go through every team. We'll talk about who they added and maybe still some of their needs and what their team looks like after the draft and free agency. Okay, we'll shift the focus over to some baseball. Okay, so Major League Baseball released their findings for the Red Sox, their findings into the investigation into the Red Sox cheating scandal. So we got to talk a little bit about this. I'm reading from a story on The Athletic. They interviewed, Major League Baseball interviewed 65 witnesses, reviewed tens of thousands of electronic communications, a 15-page report on the Red Sox, which was 6 pages longer than the report on the Astros, a team which it disciplined much more harshly. So baseball MLB said that the Red Sox actions were much less egregious than those of the Astros. Commissioner Rob Manfred confirmed on Wednesday. He also noted the superior conduct of the Red Sox front office, saying it made commendable efforts towards instilling a culture of compliance in the organization. That makes me want to vomit. Okay, so we'll get to it later on as we read through this, but this is the very same organization that in 2017 had an Apple Watch incident, and that's exactly what this article says next. Diligent as those efforts might have been, they proved insufficient, resulting in the second round of punishment for the Red Sox in 3 years, following September 2017 Apple Watch incident for using electronics to steal signs illegally. Like, everything you read in this is the problem that I have, and The Athletic calls bullshit on this too. Right, when you read the reports, and I think a lot of the people are. The only people that seem to be okay with this are the fans of the Red Sox or the fans of the Astros who are, and I understand what baseball's doing. They don't want this big scandal hanging over everyone. They don't want everyone to know that 2 of their top teams were involved in big-time cheating, which, no matter how much cheating it is, right, they got caught cheating. So by giving these like slap on the wrist penalties, you're basically telling the entire rest of the league it's okay to cheat. And we kind of know this already because baseball's been kind of that way, right? They turn their head all the time to whatever the new like cheating is. Like earlier on, maybe it was amphetamines, and then it was the steroid era, and then things changed a little bit now to the more like the stealing signs era. And they're just an organization that is okay with cheating. It's funny. It reminds me a lot of horse racing. It's like somebody does something wrong and they fine them $500 and they expect those people to not continue to do the wrong things. It's like when there's no real punishment for your crimes, they don't even really feel like crimes. You don't even feel like you did something wrong because you're not getting punished. So, this time, Manfred strips the Red Sox of their second-round pick in the 2020 draft, and they suspended the team's video replay system operator, J.T. Watkins, through the 2020 postseason, prohibiting him from returning to the same position in 21. That's like, a second-round pick and the video replay operator suspended? The commissioner also suspended Cora through the 2020 postseason, but only for his conduct on the Astros bench as the coach in 2017, not as the Red Sox manager in 2018 when the team won 108 games and the World Series. So the mastermind of the Astros cheating in 2017 came over to the Red Sox, who then are the best team in baseball, a team that everything goes right for, and he is not doing any cheating whatsoever. None. Nothing. Zilch. Zippo. Huh? I'm really supposed to believe that? I'm supposed to believe that the only guy that was doing anything and the only one that knew was JT Watkins, a video replay operator? He's the only one telling like one or two people? And even if, let's say, if that was the case, that's still cheating. But I'm supposed to believe that they didn't know what was going on? People who have track records for doing this exact thing and setting up huge systems like this right before? I mean, really? So, it says the investigation, and I'm reading a lot through this article from The Athletic. The investigation of the Red Sox was challenging for the league in several respects. Witnesses offered conflicting accounts. The team video replay room infractions happen off the field, away from cameras, making them difficult to prove. To Manfred, the differences between the violations of the Red Sox and Astros warranted not only a different punishment, but also a different perspective. A perspective some might interpret as inconsistent with his previous rulings. Thank you. It's like, I don't know why he's trying to protect these teams because it's on him, and it's just making him look worse and worse. The question they ask, why were comparable employees in the Astros and the Red Sox organizations handled differently? Well, it says Watkins was in a similar role to the Astros, to some of the Astros staffers, and it says the Astros had 2 sign stealing schemes, the most blatant one set up in 2017. The Red Sox are not known to have engaged in anything comparable to that system, which, sure, I agree. We haven't heard that. But both before and after the trash can method, including during the 2018 season, the Astros communicated signs to players in their dugout via the video replay room. That system is analogous to what the Red Sox were punished for on Wednesday. If the Astros committed 2 crimes, the Red Sox committed 1, the lesser of Houston's pair. The Red Sox loss of a draft pick seemed from Manfred's desire to hold the team accountable. I mean, this is just nothing, right? How are they not getting disciplined more than that? There's just going to be cheating. I mean, now I'm looking at a team. Why wouldn't you cheat? You're not losing anything. You're not getting stripped. You're not getting multiple draft picks, huge fines. It's like big stuff. It's just one or two people goes down on the cross, right? 1 or 2 people make like sacrifices themselves and goes out on their shield. And that's it. Why wouldn't the managers and other staffers be aware of what was going on? Manfred said, quote, I did not find that the then manager Alex Cora, the Red Sox coaching staff, and the Red Sox front office, or most of the players of the 2018 team knew or should have known that Watkins was using in-game video to update the information he had learned from his pre-game analysis. Huh? Really? This is, and so that's, the Athletic says, why wouldn't at least some in the organization have known? This is perfectly stated what comes next. It is theoretically possible that Watkins operated so covertly that he only knew what he was doing, and further, that only he knew that it was a violation, and that none of the beneficiaries of the system were aware something illegal was transpiring. Sure, there's a minute, very tiny chance. But even if that was the truth, does this team that's already been caught in 2017, and then the coach who was already caught on a different team in 2017, do they both deserve any benefit of the doubt whatsoever? Absolutely not. So this goes on to say, if you understand clubhouse dynamics, how the video replay sign stealing relay in fact work, information travels into the dugout, then to a runner on base, it makes the theory that the players don't know somewhat implausible. Rob Manfred said he heard from players who said they were aware that decoding signs during games took place. Red Sox hitters met every night before every game with staff, or not never met before every game with staff to prepare for a given night. In those meetings, the group discussed how a runner on second base would signal with a body movement to tell the hitter what was coming. That is not illegal unless in-game electronics enter the equation, as was the case with Watkins. And most players are generally aware of what is going on in the dugout. A lot of these words aren't mine. These are from the Athletic article. We all know that we're getting lied to, and we're supposed to believe it. And it's like, people treat us as fans stupid. They do. Why was Red Sox management not held responsible? In his report on the Astros' illegal sign stealing, Manfred made reference to his handling of the Apple Watch incident, saying, "I made the decision in September 2017 that I would hold a club's general manager and field manager accountable for misconduct of this kind." He did not apply that standard in this case. Instead, he determined that the former president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, and his staff properly conveyed the rules to Cora and his coaches. The commissioner did not find that Cora was aware of misconduct, but Cora did not effectively communicate to Red Sox players the sign-stealing rules that were in place for the 2018 season. But he got no additional discipline. Really? Does any of this make sense? After effectively concluding that Watkins was a rogue employee, the league felt it apparently could not justify holding Cora accountable. Why should the Red Sox be credited for attempting to instill a culture of compliance when the team's players did not understand the rules? Manfred first punished the Red Sox in 2017. He said he had received assurances from the franchise that no similar violations would occur again. Yet, in Wednesday's report, Manfred wrote that many players told my investigators that they were unaware that in-game sign decoding from the replay station had been prohibited in 2018 and 2019. If the Red Sox culture was so strong, why were their players not better educated about the rules? Boom. It says, this was a quote from the Red Sox president, Sam Kennedy, CEO. "At the end of the day, we all could have done a better job, and we need to do a better job as we go forward." Yeah, that's nice once you've won a World Series. It's funny how that works, right? Because, like, if things don't go perfectly for you all year long, like they didn't for the Red Sox this year, they didn't make the playoffs. So it's amazing, right? It's funny. The fans of the Sox and the Astros want to say that the cheating didn't help them. Yet, it seems like the years when there were more cracked down on cheating and they weren't able to as much, they didn't win. I guess that's some weird coincidence, right? It says, Red Sox staff and players, they're comfortable with Watkins taking all the heat. The positioning of Watkins as a singular fall guy, even if warranted, will be difficult for many to accept. Watkins' role was to serve players. He faced pressure to help them in any way he could. Sources say that in fighting the charges, he provided evidence that he had stopped players from peeking at his monitor on more than one occasion. What? Okay, so you stopped players from peeking at your monitor once or twice, but you've helped them 5,000 times before that. This is like a script for like a parody. You know, this is something like you'd see on Comedy Central or like So, Watkins first joined the organization in 2020. He returned in 2015 after serving 2 years in the military. He is well-liked, hardly known as a lone wolf, and traveling staffers are usually treated like family, like players themselves. Then it says, how much responsibility should MLB bear for an environment that was conducive to cheating? Teams are obligated to follow the rules, but the body issuing those rules, the commissioner's office, is obligated to ensure their clarity and enforcement. I'm upset with Boston and with Houston, but I'm more upset with MLB. Because if they're not, like I said, if they're not cracking down on it, it's worth it. I don't want the Dodgers to go out and start cheating, but if they did and I was in this situation as a fan, I wouldn't be saying, well, we were better than everyone. I would just be kind of happy that they didn't take the World Series away, they didn't take the ring away, and that I still remember winning those games. You're not going to ever take that away from me. Manfred acknowledged that Watkins' job responsibilities placed him in a precarious spot. In my view, Watkins was placed in a difficult position by the virtue of his dual role as the person responsible for decoding signs pre-game and as the person responsible for operating the Red Sox replay system. Watkins admitted that because he watched the game feeds during the entire game, he was able to determine during the game when the sign sequences he provided to players to the game were wrong. Thus, he was in a difficult position of often knowing what the sequences were. I mean, this is just crap. I just keep shaking my head every time I read through this kind of stuff. To address its lack of foresight about the potential for the combination of video replay, the challenge system, and club culture to create an environment conducive to rule breaking, MLB can only revise its rules again, something it plans to do before play resumes. It's Red Sox GM. It's no excuse for a rule violation. We're all accountable for our behavior, and we're all responsible for following the rules, whatever they are. But I think structurally, we ought to do everything we can to make sure the confusion can't occur and these aspects of our game are beyond reproach. Sheesh. So, yeah, the Red Sox cheated, but because it was only in certain situations when there was runners on, and only because a few people did, and only it was this one guy nobody else knew for sure, that it's okay and nothing really matters. So, what do they say? Cheaters never prosper? I guess cheaters do prosper. Just wanted to remind you about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast, Sarah Candle Company. Visit sarahcandles.com, CERA candles.com. Use the promo code GINO for 10% off of your entire purchase. These are all natural soy wax candles. They burn longer. They are better for you than the candles out there that have that traditional paraffin wax. I know the people from this company personally. I've grown up with them my whole life. They love candles, and the goal was to have an affordable candle that everyone can enjoy. Use that promo code GINO. My favorite is Fresh Roses. The Fresh Roses scent is awesome. If you're a horse racing fan, they got Del Mar in there. You ever want to know what Del Mar smells like, but you couldn't make it out there? Order your candle right now from Sarah Candle Company. The website, CERAcandles.com. SarahCandles.com. Promo code GINO for 10% off your purchase. Okay, let's talk a little horse racing. First, let's talk some Saturday, and then we'll talk a little Sunday. Just 3 plays for me out at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. So get your past performances out. We're April the 25th. So we're going to get to race number 5, and let's look at the number 2, Fugitive. This is a horse that I gave out last time. He ran on April the 11th, and I played him that day. And you know, if you go back to his debut, he ran really well. He was fourth. He showed some ability, and he was behind a horse who's come back in who has won since. And then on April the 11th, he broke really well from the outside. He was on the lead, but then he chose to sit, which was okay, right? He's right off the pace. He's in second. He's just sitting off of the horse who was actually put up as the eventual winner that day, Colonel Liam. And he looms right up. He looks like he is loaded. He looks like he's going to blow right by. He moves up on even terms without being asked. And then as soon as he's asked, he just has nothing. And I thought he was going to, just fade and run dead last. And he ends up holding third. And he still ran, pretty well at the mile that day. He might have just been behind a couple horses that maybe were a little bit better than him. Now he catches a field where, I don't really love anybody in here. The Chad Brown first-time starter is going to take a lot of money. Maybe you have a couple intriguing firsters towards the outside. I don't think there's anyone else in here that really scares me. The 4 obviously wouldn't shock with some improvement. There's no one in here that I'm terrified of. And you're going to get Fugitive, who showed us last time out that he's got pretty good speed. Now he cuts back from the mile to 7 furlongs. He can sit, he can pass horses, and down on the inside, if he breaks well, he just could be long gone in here. If you're able to get the lead on the cutback, you're so tough to pass sometimes. And this horse has some ability. So let's use the number 2, Fugitive. Maybe a horse you can key in some of your exotics. If we get over 5-2, we'll play a win wager on him. I'm sure the money will come in. On the 8, you're going to see Irad Ortiz Jr.'s name popping up all over the past performances, and the way a lot of the pilots have been riding at Gulfstream, don't be shocked to see him win tons and tons of races, but they're probably going to be at short prices and a little over bet. So let's begin on Gulfstream Park Saturday, 25th, with the number 2, Fugitive. Then let's go to race number 9 at Gulfstream, and this one is the Unbridled. They're going to go a mile and a 16th. I've chased Necker Islands a few times, and, I wouldn't really talk you off using him. He's a little better when he can show speed, and maybe from the rail, he'll be a little forced. But I do think Relentless Dancer looks like he has a major advantage in here, because there just isn't a ton of speed on paper, and he should get the lead in here around 5-1. He's coming out, you'll look and you'll probably just think, okay, he's the horse you're going to play because he's going to get the lead. But he's coming out of, the Tampa Bay Derby and the Holy Bull. He might have just been, 4th in a couple races behind Tiz the Law, Ete Indian, King Guillermo, Sol Volante, Texas Swing, Toledo. Those horses are just probably a little more talented than him. A little more, graded stakes ready at this point in his career. If he gets out front, able to kind of clear and slow things down, could be super, super tough in here. And, attachment rate, we'll see if he can go this far. This is a fun race, and that's why Relentless Dancer should have every opportunity. I don't think he even necessarily, if Necker Island goes, he can sit off a little bit, but his best case scenario in here would be, okay, let's try to send, even if we have to go a little quicker earlier than we want, and let's open up, then we can slow things down a little bit. That's the 4, Relentless Dancer. Make sure to use him in your exotics and make a win wager if you can get 5-1 or so. And then in race number 11 at Gulfstream Park, the 7 Borracho is going to be the top selection in here. I've just become a really good fan of this pretty solid late running sprinter. He can go a mile, he can go a little bit longer, but he's best here when he's going, 7 furlongs, kind of that elongated sprint. The concern is, he hasn't raced since August, but you're going to get that price built in here. 12-1's too high. He should be about half that. He feels like a 5-6-1 shot with horses who, have some questions. Like the 2 Soldado, is he classy enough to go with a group like this, and does he want to go 7? He's super talented, and he's in really nice form right now. You have a horse like Majestic Dunhill who's faced tougher. This is a really, really interesting race. You can make cases for many. The 3, we'll see if he can transfer some form over to the dirt. Spinoff, who was in the Derby and the Belmont in 2019, and who, another one who's coming off of a long layoff. He's kind of, I think, going to be using this as more of a prep for down the line. He seems like the type of horse who wants to just go a little longer. Global Campaign wouldn't shock, but I'm a little bit worried because we just haven't seen, we've seen him race to the bench again, but he hasn't done a whole hell of a lot wrong, and he was super highly regarded. The 9 actually has an opportunity. If anyone could clear, it might be the 9, and that's, with Borracho, he doesn't have to be coming from dead last. Maybe because he's fresh, he could be a little bit closer today. Not on the lead close, but 5th, 6th, maybe mid pack or so. So let's use the 7 Borracho. We'll make a win wager on him if we can get about 6-1 or so. The 9 Yorkton, if you're playing any late exotics, make sure to use him. And then underneath, I think you'd have the 2 and the 4. But for me, I think 7 and 9, the opportunity in here, and in particular, the 9 with that kind of recency edge and maybe the tactical edge over some others in here with the speed and with the outside draw. That's a Gulfstream Park for Saturday. Let's get you over to Oaklawn for Saturday. Oaklawn Park for Saturday. Let's get you to race number 3. So get your past performances out. We're talking April 25th, Oaklawn Park, and race number 3. We're going to go to the 4. I Lived It. He, in his debut, he had a fine start. He was close up, he was 5th, he was tucked inside, and then he was starting to travel well, and he wanted to go, but he went right up on the heels of a rival. He had nowhere to go. Now you get the drop in class, And he doesn't have to improve a ton in here to be right in contention with some of the others. And because you don't have top-notch connections, you get the price built in. He should be more like a 5-to-1 shot, and if he's anything above that, make sure to put a win wager on him and use him in all exotics. The one Wooden Shock, who dropped down and proved that the maiden claimers were a better level for him. The 7, obviously, Northside would be no shock in here. But the 4's got a shot, and any improvement at all puts him right there, and we get that logical second out improvement with a horse who has some tactical speed, who's going to be dropping in class. Let's give the 4, I Lived It, top billing in race number 3. Let's get you to race number 5. And the 5th race, we'll go to the 9, Boyfriend Material. He's going to go first, start off the claim for trainer Jason Barkley, who's very, very capable with new acquisitions, and then you claim him and you immediately geld him, and you give him plenty of time. We last saw him at the end of February, and in that race, he had to take back from the inside because he was in tight, and he had, the rail horse broke slow, so he ends up on the rail. He gets shuffled back. He couldn't, get to the major pace factor that day. He is best when he can just sit really, really close and right off the pace. But he has enough speed to go get the lead if nobody else goes. I like when you have that little bit of versatility. Let's give the 9, Boyfriend Material, our money, and we'll make him the top selection here. If we can get anything, 7-2 is where my value line on Boyfriend Material is. In the 6th race, this is a horse who I last saw win at Sam Houston. He was at Oaklawn Park last time out, and it was a slow start. He was last. He was 4 wide chasing. He moved into contention, and he ran a little bit better than it looks. He was just kind of against the race shape that day, and he was just a little far out of it. That also was a race that his second start off of a very long layoff, so he may have regressed a little bit off the big effort, but his top races are good enough to win. That's what I'm always looking for when I'm handicapping a race, okay? I'm looking for horses who, and every race is different, right? You're not able to find those in a lot of races, but the horses that I love are the ones that didn't run really well last time out, but they might have had a reason. And when you start to dig, you can go, wow, you know what? This horse's good races are definitely good enough to beat this field. Horses don't always fit that profile. Some horses you can look back at and you're like, you know what, they've never been good enough to win a race like this. That's not the case with Awesome Saturday here. I think this is a great, great fit. He's going to be making his 3rd start off the really, really long layoff. Let's go with the 8, Awesome Saturday. If we can get anything around 5-1, we'll make a win wager on that one. Time to move to race number 8 at Oaklawn Park. We'll hit the last 4 races here with 8, 9, 10, and 11. So race number 8, you're probably going to get some speed from the 1, flat out speed. You're probably going to get some pace from the 3, Budiyama. The 4 is sneaking out, should be pretty close up. You're looking at the 8, Ready to Runway, who's going to show some pace. The 9, Bye Bye Jay, is going to show some speed. This race should set up really well for the 10, Beautiful Tail. So if you go back to January the 9th, she's coming off the bench, and she runs into a horse named La Femme Royale, who had won her 3rd in a row and her 4th of 5, and Beautiful Tail just misses that day at Fairgrounds, going 6 furlongs. Then comes back most recently, and it's just a field of 4, and she ends up last, and she gets like a little bit outrun, and almost, she's like 6 or 7 lengths back. She's almost like distance from the field. Then she starts to close really well. She just misses that day, and she's big on the gallop out behind a horse who comes right back to win next out. I think Beautiful Tail is in a great spot here. We'll make a win wager if we can get anything around 6-1. If you're playing any late pick 4s or anything, make sure to throw in the 10, Beautiful Tail. Perhaps a late pick 4 single for me will come in The Bachelor with the number 3, Echo Town, who, he's a trouble trip away from being undefeated in his 3 starts. He was a nice debut winner. Then he came back on February the 23rd. He had a good start. He was inside of 3, and he was right on the lead, and he kind of took back a little bit, and then he got shuffled. He lost a few lengths. He dropped from like 3rd all the way back to 6th, and it was kind of just an indecisive ride that cost him. If he would have maybe gone or taken back, but he was just in no man's land. He got the shuffle. He really rallied up nicely on the inside for third. Then he came right back to crush. He's proven in the slop. He's run well on the fast track, and like I said, he should be undefeated, if not for that trouble on February the 23rd. Ginobili, he didn't have the best of starts, and he needs to be a little closer to the lead. I wouldn't be shocked to see him run a little bit better, but I'm against 8 rings in here. I'm just willing to take a shot against him. He's kind of quirky. He's had been a horse who's been his own worst enemy. He's had a while. It's been a while for him getting back to the races, so I think we're better off taking a shot elsewhere. And to me, Echo Town is going to get played a little bit in here. I wouldn't be shocked if he's anything around 2-1, 5-2, and if he's at 5-2, that to me is value in this race. Long weekend on the outside. Just want to give them a mention because this is a really sharp one who's in good form and very, very quick. But let's go with Echo Town, who has the ability to sit. In race 10, this is the Carousel. Bellafina's the class of the field, no doubt about it, but she's in a tough spot with the rail draw because she's probably not the quickest in here, and then she's going to be stuck in that spot where things could get really difficult for her. So, do you want to take an extremely short price on her? I'm okay if you don't want to. I understand if you think she's just the class of the field, but to me, the draw for Mia Mischief is going to make her very, very tough in here. She's a Grade 1 winner, and she made her return to the races on March the 20th. She hadn't raced from November to March. She sat close up on the inside. She got shuffled early. She was like 5th, 6th. She was a couple lengths off, 2-3 off, and she had to move in between. She kind of forced her way through. It was a really nice comeback race. She got her comeback out of the way, whereas a horse like Bellafina hasn't raced since the end of 2019. But now she gets the outside draw, does Mia Mischief, with her running style on a track that she likes. I mean, she rarely throws in a bad race. This is a great spot for her. Let's go with the 8, Mia Mischief. If she's over 5-2, we're going to play her and maybe even build some late exotics around her. And then to close things out in race number 11, I mean, who's going to get the lead in here? There is no speed signed on paper. You have a couple horses stretching out from sprints, and to me, it's got to be Violent Pass that gets to the front. So in his debut on March the 7th, he was like right up on the lead. He was sitting really, really close. He was a good third that day, and you expected him to, again, get a similar trip on April the 11th, but he had a brutal start. He was back to 10th of 12. He was way out of it. Now he's going to stretch out. And he was quick. I mean, in that debut, he's first step slow, and then he's really quick. He got right to the lead, then he decides to sit third when a couple others went, and he ends up running a good third that day. He was asked for a 3-wide move, and he ends up losing to an experienced horse who was the favorite that day named Liam's Pride. So his 2 races, the debut is good when he's flashing speed. Then he has legitimate trouble, a race that you can excuse. That's going to build up your price a little bit. You get 2 sprints to a route, and he should be right on the engine in a race that has not a lot of speed on paper. Make sure to use the 3, Violent Pass. I mean, if he's over 6-1, we're going to bet him to win. He feels more like a 5-6-1 shot in this race where there's just not a ton of speed, and he could have a major advantage on this group early on. That's the 3, Violent Pass. So just to remind you, for Oaklawn Saturday, race number 3, the number 4, I lived it. The 5th race, let's go to the number 9, Boyfriend Material. If we can get like 7-2, we'll make a wager there. Use that one in your exotics. The 6th race, don't forget about Awesome Saturday. The 8, anything over 5-1 seems fair. The 8th race, the number 10, Beautiful Tale, anything around 6-1 or so seems like the price that we want. Race number 9, the 3, Echo Town. Let's go 5-2 or so, and maybe a single and some late exotics. Wouldn't talk you off building some exotics around the number 8, Mia Mischief in race number 10. Anything around 5-2 seems fair on her. And then in the final race at Oaklawn Park on Saturday, the number 3, Violent Pass, and around 6-1. Let's get you over to Oaklawn for Sunday. Going to have a few Sunday plays for you this week, just at Oaklawn, and we'll just go in the late pick 4. So here's kind of how I'm going to approach this. Is basically, if you're playing the late races at Oaklawn, don't play. Make sure to throw these horses in on your pick 4 ticket. Okay, here's the approach. In race number 7, so remember we're at Oaklawn on Sunday, April the 26th. Look at the 8, NJ's Brass. So his April 11th race, it looks okay on paper, but it's much better than that. He sits close up, he's inside, but then immediately he's in tight. He starts to lose ground, he's pushed back, he has nowhere to go, he starts losing, he ends up losing like 4 lengths. He goes from, maybe a length off to he's like 5 out of it. He comes on again in between horses, and he's not far behind Madison Way, who just looks like she ran a lot better because she finished 3rd and NJ's Brass finished 5th. But NJ's Brass might have been better. He had some legitimate trouble in there. Let's go with the 8, NJ's Brass. Let's make a win wager on this one if we can get anything around 6-1 or so on this filly. That's in race number 7, which starts your late pick 4, so make sure to include her in those late pick 4 tickets. And then a price in race number 8 to take a look at. The 12 Slime Queen, who takes the blinkers off. You can probably toss the race in the slop last time out, and she was behind a horse named Lucky Betty, who just came back to win very impressively against First Level Allowance Company. That was Slime Queen's first start in a couple months. Probably needed the race. First start at Oaklawn Park. Now she's going to cut back to 6 furlongs, which is a little bit interesting because she's only been going a mile plus in her 5-race career. And she ran really well in the first couple starts of her career, a couple of them on the grass and one of them on the synthetic at Arlington. We just don't know at all what sprinting on the dirt is going to be like for her. But if she's a price, if she's like 8-1 or over, she's absolutely worth taking a shot because what I like about her, she showed some route speed last time out. Now she's going to cut back to the elongated sprint. I don't think she's slow. I don't think she has to be way out of it. But she should come rolling late and have a lot of bottom. So I'm willing to give this one a shot in some of the late exotics here. The number 12, Slime Queen. If we can get around 8-1, let's make a win wager on Slime Queen. And then in race number 9... I'm going to go to the 6, Charming Lady. This might be, Edgeway is going to be really tough. If she gets, if she's able to clear up front, she'll be tough. But the 1, Wasabi Girl, isn't exactly slow. The 2, Sakani, shouldn't be far out of it. The 3, Misty Blue, has some speed. She could be right up in the mix. The 7 has some pace. The 8 has some pace. We look at the 12 has some speed. I mean, there's a lot of these young fillies who could be right up on the engine, could make it really tough in here for Edgeway. That's going to be perfect for Charming Lady, who was really nice in her sprint race in her debut when she sat off the pace like a pro and won. And then she stretched out twice and she tried to go a little bit longer. And I just don't think she really wants to go long. Last time she sat second, or maybe not long this early at this moment. She sat second, she was just off, but she just couldn't get by Fire Corral. She loomed up. She was right on even terms, and she actually took the lead, but she just hung a little bit late. This cutback is going to help her a ton, and this is the kind of race where I'm fine playing against Edgeway with a lot of other speed in here. Let's use the 6, Charming Lady in all exotics. We'll make a win wager if we can get anything around 5-2. Closing things out in the 10th at Oaklawn on Sunday. I'm a little surprised that the 10 was 10-1 on the morning line, shocking fast. Maiden Special Weight winner at Oaklawn on February the 29th. Then on April the 3rd, was 4 wide into the turn, sat 3rd, was a couple lengths off, moved to 2nd, but was all in early, holds 4th. Now you get the cutback, going 3rd start off the very long layoff. This horse was only 5-2 last time out in a similar spot, going long. Now you cut back to a sprint distance where she's actually had success. She's going to be making her 3rd start off a long layoff. I mean, I'm not going to play any exotics without her. Shocking fast, the number 10. Make sure to use her. She feels a lot more like a 4-1 shot to me. If we can get anything, over 7-2, we're making a win wager on the number 10, Shocking Fast. So the horses that we like today at Oaklawn Park, that we like on Sunday, the 26th at Oaklawn Park. 7th race, the number 8, NJ's Brass. Make sure you get around 6 to 1 or so. 8th race to 12, Slime Queen. Anything around 8 to 1 or so seems fair. 9th race to 6, Charming Lady. Anything around 5 to 2, maybe a late exotics horse to build around. And in the 10th race, the number 10, Shocking Fast at 7 to 2. Best of luck this weekend with all of your horse racing. We are going to take a break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and then immediately following that break, it's going to be closing time with Wrestlemania 6. We go through every match on the Wrestlemania 6 card, all the promos. We set you up what was happening in the world of the WWF back in 1990. Andrew Champagne, Darren Zocali. We have a lot of fun. So if you're a wrestling fan, not even a current wrestling fan, right? If you're an old wrestling fan, you remember the days of the Macho Man and Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant. We had Jesse the Body Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon on commentary, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jimmy Hart, the managers out there having a ton of fun, Jake the Snakes in this show. So lots of fun to talk about. We get a little nostalgic. We go back in time. It's going to be Wrestlemania 6 with the boys, immediately following a word from one of our sponsors. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, if like I said, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
The WrestleMania rewatch, rewind, recap train rolls on, Gorilla, and we are up to WrestleMania 6 now. I guess we're actually back to WrestleMania 6 because we moved forward to WrestleMania 13. Now we're going back in time to WrestleMania 6. We're going back to 1990, and Darren Zocali, Andrew Champagne here to join me. Fellas, thanks for doing this again. This was a fun show, and just kind of overall, and not when you look at this show compared to 4 and 5, which were in the convention hall, in New Jersey and Atlantic City. The scope of this one felt a lot more like that WrestleMania 3 did than those last couple. This had that big show feel.
Oh yeah. I mean, 67,000 and change up there in the Sky Dome. I mean, a monster stadium. Loud from the word go, and it had a very big card in terms of matches, 14 matches, none of them particularly long outside of the main event. So you get like a lot of rapid fire. Most of them are fun. They're entertaining.
Yeah.
There's a couple of funny spots in it. Up to this point, I would say probably the second best WrestleMania as of 1990, and it's probably the second best up until WrestleMania 10, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm gonna be the grouch. Gino,
Here comes
Darren,
Oscar.
Here comes the proposition for you. I'm going to give you a 14-match card with a lot of big names at the peaks of their respective powers or on the ascendancy in some cases. It's going to sound really good. Here's the kicker. There's one all-time great match. There's a couple of really good matches, including some that surprised me when I was rewatching. But about 2/3 of it is going to leave you wondering, why did they book this here? Did this have to happen?
That's a good point.
Not a house show. This seemed like it seemed like it was. It's something so completely different from the WrestleManias that we're used to seeing now over the last 10 or 15 years. This seemed like, in a lot of ways, they were trying to get guys on the card, trying to get guys a payday, and they were doing stuff where you're wondering, who are they booking for? And it just seemed like a lot of guys were spinning their wheels. I'll agree with Darren to a point. Some of this stuff was really fun. Some of it, though, as I rewatched, left me scratching my head, and we'll get into it as we go match by match.
They seem to be, like, there were a few, too, just kind of off the top, that they're, like, starting the builds with a lot of these guys, and so we get these weird kind of squashy type matches, like Rick Martel's kind of, newly turned heel. They're building up Earthquake. They're building up the Barbarian. Jim Duggan kind of getting a win because he's got the thing going on with Earthquake. Big Boss Man just turned. There's just a lot of things that are like just kind of, I think, starting, which is weird because WrestleMania, like you mentioned, Andrew, we've come to know it, and even early on as kind of more of like a culmination, an ending of these feuds where we feel like we're going to get like a definitive result. That was not the case here. And to me, like, Jesse just steals this show. I mean, this was like one of the unbelievable rewatches of like Jesse the Body on the commentary, and we'll hit a lot of the spots. But I mean, it's unfortunate because there's actually one point through the show when they're showing the promotional stuff for next year's WrestleMania, which we've already covered, and they're talking about how it's going to be at the Coliseum, which we know that it's not. It's funny because Jesse says, yeah, me and all my Hollywood friends were going to be there, and it's like, nope, you're not, and none of them are going to be, you won't be. So weird how much stuff changes, but he was really letting loose, and he got pretty crazy in a couple different spots throughout this. But I think I kind of feel like right in the middle of the two of you. I like a lot of this show, watching it back, and I'm glad that a lot of the bad is quick. But I think you hit it right, Andrew. Like, there are a lot of, and then where I totally agree with Darren and what we're talking about is that the scope of this Mania is what makes even some of those matches a little bit better, and the moments seem a little bit more because the crowd is fun, crazy. Even that wave like thing that they have going for a little while, and there are some moments here, but it was not what we've known as the way WrestleMania was booked. So we'll get through each of the matches like we do. But Darren, I know you've mentioned a bunch of times you're a big Warrior guy, and this was basically the passing of the torch show. We very rarely, I mean, I can't recall like ever at this point would see like the Intercontinental Champion and the World Champion in a feud. It was generally like those were different worlds. They were kind of like different divisions. They were like different tiers. They would very rarely be battling. And we did not almost ever see like good guy matches and bad guy matches. It was very simple the way they set things up most of the time. You got your good guy, you got your bad guy. So this was new on a couple different accounts. And then throw the fact in that, the man who Vince McMahon basically built his company on the back of, the WWF over the past 5 years, he's going to be passing the torch here to a new star. There were a lot of things that were kind of different, unique, and actually very fun about this show. I'm sure as a Warrior fan, you really love it.
Yeah, this is the Warrior's moment. He has a couple other moments later on, but this is his big moment. Looking back on it, I look back on it with some disappointment in that his WWE career did not, escalate from here. The title run that he gets is meh. He's got a good feud with Rick Rude. They put on some good matches, but there could have been a lot more there. He never gets the title back again, and he goes through the issues that he has with Vince, in and out of the company, so on and so forth. But it's a great moment. It's a great ending. And as we kind of touched on, I think a couple of shows ago, you have two guys in the ring that are monster personalities, charisma, all that fun stuff, but neither of them much of a worker in the ring. And you get, for their skill levels, an A-plus match, which is really all you can ask for. And it makes it a lot of fun. And at this point, as a kid, Warriors got the title. The only other time I ever remembered heavyweight title versus intercontinental title on a pay-per-view was Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. But
92
only one
Survivor Series, right?
Yeah, but Shawn's belt wasn't on the line, so it was not really a title-for-title match. But that was, good guy versus bad guy. And most of all, you always wondered what color Warrior was going to make the title belt. It was blue for a while. It ends up becoming purple. But it's a great moment as a Warrior guy. I was beyond pumped when that 3 hit, for sure.
The thing with Warrior that killed him more than anything else after this is something that we've talked about a lot. For a long time, WWF had a big problem building up main event level heels.
Yes.
They had Rick Rude, and Rude was very good for what he was, but very few people really bought Rude as a threat to the title. He had already gotten the Intercontinental title belt. He was on the verge. They may be having a run with it, maybe being believable, but he came up to a glass ceiling that he could never break through. And then he went to WCW, where he quietly had a tremendous run to end his career before he unfortunately got hurt. After Rude, you had Ted DiBiase, who his glory days were several years before that. He could still work, and he still had value in the right settings, but he wasn't a main event level guy. No. Hulk had Andre the Giant. Hulk had Rowdy Roddy Piper. Warrior gets those two guys, and then he jobs to Sergeant Slaughter at the Royal Rumble. Some of it may be due to the fact that Warrior didn't take off like Hogan did. In fairness, very few wrestlers in history ever have, but he didn't exactly have a lot of help from the guy that the fans were supposed to hate in Rude and DiBiase. Those just didn't take as top-level heels that you bought challenging Warrior for that kind of title.
It would have been nice, and I think they were just trying, Savage had just been in the picture for a couple years. It would have been so much nicer if they could have just really, skipped over that whole Slaughter thing, and it could have been Savage, against Warrior for the title. That would have just been a much better program for Warrior as far as getting good matches. I think the crowd interest in Savage, people are always interested in Savage much more than you mentioned Rude. Earthquake was in the mix sometimes with him here, so he didn't get the benefit of the doubt. And it's really interesting where he goes, over the next couple of years, because we see him, obviously next year where he has that great match with Savage, and then we see him in '92 just come out at the end of the show, which I think we're gonna talk about maybe in the next couple of weeks or so. But let's jump into it. We'll hit on everything as we get into each of the matches. So we get things started as Darren mentioned. 67,000 plus 678 is the number. And this was one of those fun shows because there were a lot of future WWE wrestlers who went to this show. We know we've heard about how Edge and Christian were there. I think Lance Storm was there. Renee Young was there also. So basically a lot of these young folks were able to convince their family to get them to WrestleMania here. And we got those the little mini rings back that I always really liked, that would take them down to the entrance ramp, because the entrance way was so long. So they're in a little mini ring, which is like a cart that they designed to look like a mini ring. We saw that in WrestleMania 3. It's a ton of fun. So we are for the first time, we're in Canada. We're the first time we're outside of the United States. We are in the Sky Dome. And as we had mentioned, unfortunately, this is the last, not even the last WrestleMania. This is the last pay-per-view that Jesse the Body ever did with the WWF. I think he did some Superstars right after this, but he goes out with a bang here. We get the opening montage. So what you guys think of this, Darren? Where, you know what, it's kind of corny, but it works for the time. You know, looking back on it now, it's like Vince is doing this whole, it's like a big space galaxy thing, and the two biggest forces in the world are Hulkamania, you know, or Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, and they collide here. So this is another one of the shows, and this feels a lot like Mania 3. I think when we look back on it, Mania 3 had more hidden gems and like a better match quality throughout the show, but it feels a lot like it when that big stadium, big show feel, and it really built around this one big match.
Yeah, it did. It was culminating with, you know, the big blow off between Hogan and Warrior. But yeah, the intro is interesting. And you know, in the beginning, I kind of forgot about it, and I'm starting to look. It's like astrology symbols in the sky, and I really didn't get it. But then, you know, they have like the outline of Hogan and Warrior, and I'm like, all right, you know, big titans in the sky. Okay, yeah, I get it. You know, but the one thing I remember with Hogan and Warrior coming into this, the moment that they had in the Royal Rumble, where, you know, you're watching it and they square off and they start to plant the seeds of what's to come. And looking back at that moment, like you have Jesse Ventura going, look at this. You know, it's just a great line. And then you get like a couple of bumps. You get the crisscross. They double clothesline each other, and that's it. I mean, I get it. You don't want to give away for free what you can sell. I get it. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the Hogan Warrior there in the Rumble, maybe just a couple of minutes. But they do start to plant the seeds. But you're right. Jesse goes out with a bang. Probably knew that this was it for him. And if you know Jesse Ventura and you watch his post-WWE interviews and the stuff that was going on with Vince and a lot of the animosity and the lawsuits and all that stuff, it wouldn't have taken a whole lot to light a fire underneath Jesse's ass here. And him soaring with some quotes, and he sure brought it this time around.
All right, I've got 3 notes here right off the bat before we get into the very first match of the show. I thought the promo to open things with Vince was really creepy. I got where they were going, but it sort of fit where Hogan and the Warrior were coming from with their promos, because neither guy made any sense. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. So why should Vince be expected to make any sense? I feel like he took that tone and he did the creepy, overdone William Shatner voice that he sometimes does. The thing I remember about the Open, if you watch really closely, and again, I'm a television radio guy by trade. That's my background. I can see this stuff. You have to look closely. Jesse Ventura looks at the wrong camera in the 2-shot with Gorilla and Jesse. Jesse on the left, Gorilla on the right. Jesse's looking at the wrong camera for about 80% of that. And then right as Gorilla Monsoon's sending it down to ringside, you see Ventura's eyes ever so subtly dart to the correct camera, and he tries to hold in laughter. It's a really cool little Easter egg if you can go back and see it, because you see the wheels turning in Jesse's head, and it's almost like, okay, I know I screwed up. That's either not going to happen again, or it's going to happen every single time in this sequence, and I'm going to make it a gigantic running gag. They go down to the ring. Robert Goulet fires up "O Canada." "O Canada" is such a better national anthem than ours. It's not even funny. You had the entire crowd standing and cheering, and you hear, "We stand on guard for thee." Like, it's a great national anthem. And it, you know, you feel chills when you hear Game 7 of an NHL playoff series. That was really cool. And that leads into Coco Beware against Rick Martel. But the opening, it's memorable for a variety of reasons. It's a strange mishmash of things that wind up going down there.
So we get Coco versus Rick Martel. You know, whenever you see Coco out here on a pay-per-view, he's going to be losing. That's what's happening. Love the guy. He was a good hand for a while, but his job here was to help get the new Rick the Model Martel over this heel role. And, you know, Coco came out firing for the first, minute or so, and he had some of his fun offense, but basically we're gonna get a little bit of a elongated squash here where Coco ends up giving up to the Boston Crab, which was one of my favorite moves to put my little sister in and when we were young and doing wrestling moves, just get her stuck in the Boston Crab, and the sharpshooter loved getting her in one of those.
Your
Coco,
poor sister, man.
Coco quits at 3 minutes and 51 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it. Martel goes over here. By the way, Coco to this day, if you watch some of his interviews, he's pretty bitter about, how he was just a jobber, and talks about the fact that a lot of promises were made and, dollar signs put in front of him that never really came to fruition. And I mean, he was a fun character, and you don't realize Coco Beware was in the WWE for almost 10 years.
He was really over, too.
Yeah. I mean, the crowd loved him.
They loved him.
Yeah.
The young kids loved him with Frankie. Yeah.
Exactly. And, I mean, he would always get a pop. Remember when him and Owen Hart put together that tag team High Energy? And, I mean,
he also had the one with Neihart, or no, that Owen had the one with Neihart. I was going to say he did it with Neihart too, a little bit too, at one point. But yeah, he had a good career before coming to WWF. He was like main event level and even like a heel in a lot of his spots. Like he could, like young Coco could really go.
No, he could. Yeah. I mean, you got some high flying stuff from him too. He had a very sweet looking drop kick. I always enjoyed that drop kick. Good worker, but like you said, I mean, always a guy that's going to be a jobber. Had to hang around wrestling for a long time because he needed the money. It's a sad story. He lost his wife about 10 years ago as well. And believe it or not, he was even sued, by the WWE about 5 years ago, pertaining to like the concussion lawsuit. So, he's had a tough life, unfortunately, but a fun worker. But yeah, I mean, this match is what you think it is. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, and Martel goes over with the Boston Crab.
We talk a lot about Coco being a good worker. People forget how good Rick Martel was, possibly because of the arrogance gimmick. But if you have the time, check his AWA stuff, check his old NWA stuff. This guy could go. Ric Flair in his biography points out, hey, when he wanted to be, this guy was as good as Ricky Steamboat. And that's as high a praise as he can give anybody, especially coming from the source. The one thing I remember from this match, there is either a botch or a really good delayed sell where Martel either bumps for nothing in a daze or he does a delayed sell after going down to the mat, coming up too early, and maybe doing a Flair thing. It's sort of impossible to tell. Look at this match. Let me know what you think. But yeah, speaking as far as the match goes, it is what you expect it to be. Martel winds up going over, has a nice little run with the WWF, and this was one of the main starts of it.
Yeah. By the way, jump in real quick.
Yeah.
The Dino Bravo Viceland Dark Side of the Ring was this week, a couple of nights before we taped this. We'll talk about Dino. He has a match later on. But Rick Martel was a good friend of Dino Bravo's. And you see in that Viceland story, and if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it, where he's only given one interview in his life where he actually talks about what happened with Dino Bravo. Wow. He pretty much always refuses to talk about it. It's something that's haunted him for a long time. And, when you do see parts of this WrestleMania, when we're going to see Andre coming up in a couple of minutes, when we're going to see Dino Bravo later, where you do, and Snuka too, there is some sadness built into some of the characters of this WrestleMania, and we'll talk about that as we go on.
Yeah, and even with Warrior, I think I said to both of you guys, like the Hogan promo is like so eerily similar when we'll get to it to like one of the promo that Warrior cut like the night before he died when he was on Monday Night Raw. It was like it was almost like he had been watching back WrestleMania 6 and it like heard that, and that was like a lot of that stuff was in his head. It's really weird. Some of these are fun to watch back, but then you have a moment or two where you get a little sad when we catch the different combinations or different matches here. We get Mean Gene backstage with Bobby the Brain and the tag team champions, the Colossal Collection. He calls them the colonoscopy connection.
Colostomy connection.
Colostomy
Yeah, it was. And his little back and forth with Bobby Heenan was just great. Heenan does all the talking naturally because, come on, it's Haku and Andre the Giant. You're not paying them to talk.
Yeah. Nothing crazy. Just a quick little interview, and then Sean Mooney has Demolition. They're now the baby faces, so we get Demolition out. They're trying to win the tag team titles for the third time. So Andre and Haku are the Colossal Connection, and Bobby and Demolition. It's crazy to think that Andre was already struggling 3 years before this in WrestleMania 3 with all the stories about how his body was giving out on him. Would he even be able to do a lot in that match? Was he going to be able to work with Hogan because he was not, in good spirits? And this is 3 years later. And so you can imagine how much, unfortunately, more frail and how much less he could even do at this point. I didn't even remember until watching this back that he doesn't get in the match, Andre. He does not even tag into this match. He's standing on the apron, and Haku's working the whole match. And there are many times where Haku will bring, one member of Demolition over and Andre will get a jab in or a kick. And I think once he came into the ring to break something up when he went through the ropes and then went back out. But he did not get into this match legally at all. We get the spot at the end where Andre gets tied up in the ropes. I mean, this was pretty basic formula, but you could just see, they obviously had to plan around the fact that Haku, don't tag Andre, because Jesse was mentioning it. Gorilla was even mentioning it, I think it's time to tag the big man. He just couldn't get in, and he couldn't really do a whole lot here. This was all about the moment. This was about giving Andre his babyface turn, his moment with Bobby there at the end, him to get the slap. Demolition super over. The last couple minutes of this match are fun. It's kind of fun when Andre kind of comes in, he gets involved, and it's a little chaotic. Demolition was super, super hot, super popular here. This was actually kind of a start after this of a heel turn for them. Yep. But, this was more to me of the moment, obviously. Haku does a damn good job in there for the 9 minutes that he's in, just getting his butt kicked.
The match starts. Well, I'll even go to the promo that you spoke about, before the match. If you watch the promo, Andre is holding on to Haku during the promo. Yeah. He's got his arm around him. Then they come into the ring, and there's a little skirmish to begin with. Andre throws a punch and a headbutt, and he almost falls down. Mm-hmm. And he has to grab the ropes. He holds onto the ropes, walking out of the ring. He comes in one more time for a breakup, throws 2 punches again. The entire match, holding onto the ropes, ties himself up in the ropes. I mean, the poor guy can't do anything. And it's really sad, to watch this and to see that and know now, when you were watching it and I was 6 years old, I didn't know. You
don't realize. No, you don't realize. Yeah.
You don't realize. You have no clue. For me, Andre the Giant is just this guy who's for me, all these guys are new. I just started watching this stuff. I'm 6 years old. Haku does everything, obviously. This is pretty. I don't even remember how they turned Demolition heel. I know this is when they started to add in Crush after this, but I don't know. I don't remember exactly what event took place that turned them heel. Maybe Andrew, when he jumps in, he could fill us in. I don't remember, but
I don't either.
The match, the match is, it is what it is. It's Demolition versus Haku. We get the fun finish at the end. You get the Andre, smacking Bobby around, which everybody obviously wants to see.
He paintbrushed him.
Yeah, exactly. One of those he missed by about 6 inches. But then, it is nice looking back on this to see him get the send-off. This is his last match.
Yeah.
In WWE. With the crowd on their feet, cheering Andre the Giant one more time as he literally rides off into the sunset. We'll see him a couple more times. We'll see him at WrestleMania 7. We'll see him at SummerSlam 91, not in a wrestling capacity. But this match, for me, Demolition wins, and eventually he's going to drop the belt to the Hearts. But this match is all about the end for Andre the Giant, and that's
a moment. That's one of those. That's what they define WrestleMania moments. Him, on his send out.
All right, you guys hit all the sad notes. I'm going to hit the happy notes. The happy note here being that Demolition has their theme music for this match.
Yeah.
If you go back to WrestleMania 7, our recap, my main beef with the Demolition match there was no Rick Derringer music. There was no dun, 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 dun. You can't hear that song and not have a smile on your face. It's like Steve Martin's theory about a banjo. But to answer your question, Darren, yeah, they added Crush into it, and at that point, the decision was made to turn them back heel ahead of a run against the Hart Foundation. This match, you guys mentioned the spot with Andre tying himself up in the ropes. That was one of Andre's favorite spots for a really long time. Bobby Heenan used to tell the story of when Andre was working with the Ultimate Warrior at house shows, they would do this spot, and Andre said, clothesline me softly, I'll go into the ropes and tie myself up. He liked doing that spot. First night they did it. Warrior comes in, 200 miles an hour, bang! Andre goes, and Heenan goes, something's going to happen here. The second night, same thing happens. Third night, Warrior comes in really fast. Andre sticks his fist up, hits Warrior right between the eyes, cracks the paint. Warrior starts to bleed. The next night after that, Warrior comes off the ropes. Ka-ding, ka-ding, ka-ding. Barely hits him. Andre goes into the ropes, leans over to Heenan and yells, he's learning. I figured we all needed some happy stuff in there because you're right. There is an undercurrent of sadness in here for a lot of reasons. Andre wasn't Andre at this point anymore, and this would be one of the last times that we see one half of Demolition before Axe winds up retiring due to a heart condition of his own, and that necessitated them bringing Crush into Demolition to make that a three-man unit. But this was a fun little match. I liked the ending of it, obviously, with Heenan berating Andre the Giant. And if you listen closely, there's a lot of words that should have been bleeped out that weren't. Heenan did not think anyone could hear him. But if you listen, you're going to hear just this profanity-laced tirade, and Heenan is so into it, he's sweating, and you can see the promo later on in the night that I believe was cut right after this happened and just tape delayed to the intermission. But that was really cool. Andre turns back into a babyface. We see him again at WrestleMania 7. And if this was sad, WrestleMania 7 was even sadder.
Yeah, no question. By the way, you talked about the booking and some of it being questionable. The outcome of this match was smart booking because they wanted to put the belts on the Hart Foundation. And you're not going to get a good match with the Hart Foundation versus Haku and Andre. You are going to get the match everybody wants to see, Hart Foundation versus Demolition. So there are going to be some questionable bookings coming up for sure. This was smart, getting the belts to Demolition before you get it to the Hart Foundation.
Co-sign on that.
Yeah, and because I think, too, at this point, this was, as you mentioned, the very end of it. Was it the Bill Eadie character who was getting ready to finish up?
Yeah, it was Axe. Yeah.
And so you were going to get more of Crush anyway, so that's fine. Like, let them get the win, turn them heel. The Hearts can get the belts there. This worked out really well. I agree. We'll point out a lot of the negatives, but there was a lot of fun with this match. This was, to me, not a negative throughout the night, just the sad stuff with Andre. But, the after moment with Andre, getting his comeuppance on Bobby the Brain, as we mentioned. We get a Mean Gene interview with Jimmy Hart, who is just really laying it on thick with the Richter scale, earthquake puns, in here. He's getting earthquake, built up, as you were mentioning too, Andrew. This was like another one of the heels that Ultimate Warrior had to work with kind of at the time, who was just like, like he's just like other interchangeable heel. There's nothing special about him whatsoever. And we got him Earthquake versus Hercules, and Hercules is now a babyface. I believe at one point they even tried to, team Hercules up with the Mega Powers, and he was kind of like a quote unquote third Mega Power in some different spots with Macho and Hogan years back. But Hercules has been a mainstay at these early WrestleManias, and he's kind of another one of those like good hands. You rarely see him winning matches though. When you see Hercules show up, but he can give you like a decent, okay, couple minute match. But this was just, this was one of those things, another like 3-4 minute squash. It went just over 4 minutes. We're building Earthquake up. He's going to be facing Hulk Hogan in that like double main event at SummerSlam later this year.
I don't know if you know this, Gino. Andrew loves big men that can move.
I try to keep it a secret. I really, truly do. And you know what? We're going to get into this in a little bit, but because I'm such a nice, generous guy, I'm going to let Darren go because I'm going to naturally do the thing that you can probably print a T-shirt of at this point.
Yeah. I mean, look, Hercules is what he is in the ring. I think Tenta / Earthquake does a fine job with him, gets what he can out of him here. You get a couple of power moves. You get the Greco-Roman thing. You get Hercules popping off of the ropes, trying to knock Earthquake down. Everybody kind of teetering with him a bit. That he actually gets the crowd going when he's going to knock him down after like the third one. And of course, Earthquake goes down to a knee, and Hercules is like, yeah, I'm going to put the Nelson on him, and so on and so forth. And we all know that that's not going to happen. Then he tries to pick him up and with I don't even know what you would call it. I don't know if it was going to be an F5 or an A or whatever the heck to do, but that was obviously not going to work. And then that's the end. But I mean, at this point of his career, his singles career, Hercules is being used to put over heels. This is what Earthquake needs to kind of launch him into his feud with Hogan, which is coming up. You get the non-bicep muscle flex from Earthquake that he loved to do. And the match is over. But I mean, it serves the purpose. It puts Earthquake over, and it gets him into the spot he needs to be to set up the feud with Hogan. Into the summer.
I want to say that I love this match just to hear Darren's reaction, but my feelings on this are pretty similar to your guys. Hercules, better worker than I remember him being, and I said that about his WrestleMania 3 match.
The 3 match, yep, yeah.
I remember him being a musclehead that worked a lot of bad matches with the Ultimate Warrior when Warrior was coming up, but he could work when he wanted to. Earthquake was coming up. They needed to build a heel. Hey, let's give him a win over Hercules at WrestleMania. That'll give him some momentum. And then he came back out again later to deal with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. We can talk about that in a little bit when it happens. Not a lot to this match except Earthquake gets busted up. He's bleeding from the mouth at the end of the match, and I couldn't tell whether he got stiffed or there was a botch or whatever. But that's something that you notice when he's going for the splash. There's blood coming out of his mouth. And I thought that was actually a pretty cool visual because this was a big guy. And it's one of those things where it sounds like a cheesy line from a Western where someone makes someone taste their own blood and then they're in for hell. Earthquake winds up winning here. Right result, given that they were trying to build him up.
We then go to Rona Barrett, who was like a gossip reporter at the time. She interviews Miss Elizabeth. And we haven't really seen a whole heck of a lot of Miss Elizabeth since WrestleMania 5. She was around a little bit afterwards with Hogan and stuff, but not a whole lot on TV and with that Mega Powers match. So they talked to her, kind of ask what she's up to, and she says she's going to be back very soon. Then we get the setup for Brutus the Barber Beefcake versus Mr. Perfect. Brutus is backstage. He has a little promo. He says he's going to cut up the perfect record of Mr. Perfect. And man, I one thing that I knew going back, and watching a lot of these, 88 through 92, 93, Brutus is damn over. Man, Brutus was really over. The crowd loved this guy. They loved the barber gimmick. It worked for him. He was wearing, colorful outfits and things here and there. Big pop coming in. And this match ends up going 7 minutes and 45 seconds. And it was quick for a while early, slowed down a little bit. There's the Genius out there with Mr. Perfect. So he's kind of doing his thing outside of the ring. He's getting involved here and there, using that steel scroll. And I kind of forgot, really, that, Perfect is got the advantage late. He's kind of holding him over. It really looks like he's just having his way with Brutus, and he can get the win anytime he wants. And then Brutus ends up slingshotting Mr. Perfect. He hits his head on the ring post, and Brutus gets the cover. And this was the first televised loss for Mr. Perfect to Brutus the Barber Beefcake here.
Yeah. And I believe when we were talking about questionable booking, this is the first time it's going to come up. Now, there are some other things going on that we can get into with the booking. Barber's obviously huge over with the crowd. Perfect can work with a broomstick, and I'm going to be honest with you. Barber is as close to a broomstick as you can get.
He is. No.
I mean, the entire match is punches, kicks, and stomps.
Yep.
And Perfect trying to do whatever he possibly can. Having him lose off of a slingshot, his first actual loss, quote unquote, in canon, even though he had been losing to Warrior in house matches leading up to this. But that's fine. We know how that works. If it didn't happen on TV, it didn't happen back then. We know. Now, why have Perfect lose this match, especially when he is going to win the Intercontinental title moving forward?
It was weird.
It was weird, but there's a reason. And the reason is that Barber was supposed to beat Perfect again at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental title.
Yes.
Barber has the parasailing accident before SummerSlam, and it ends up being the Texas Tornado in that spot. So when you look at it that way, it's not totally insane. However, I would still argue that you still have Perfect win this, and then you have Barber beat him for the title later if that's what the plan
and he can cheat to win this match or whatever it be. He's got the genius out there with him. It can be if you want to quote unquote protect Brutus, I'm fine with that. That's fine. They did that a lot in this era of protecting someone. It was a DQ or counter. We see this a couple times, and then they kind of get their heat back after. Brutus can do the haircut thing. The crowd is fine with it. I agree with you. Knowing what happened moving forward is why it's weird. It's crazy to think that Brutus was at this level for a while and was at that Intercontinental range, Andrew, but he never held that belt.
It really pays to be friends with the right people, brother. No, you guys are right. Brutus Beefcake was nothing special in the ring. He found magic with the Clippers. The Clippers got him over. And once he had it, he developed a nice little run for himself. Unfortunately, he had the parasailing accident that darn near killed him. And if you listen to some of the stories that he tells after that, it's horrifying. But there were a couple of different times he was supposed to win the Intercontinental title. This was the second one. The first, if you believe some of the stories floating around at the time, was SummerSlam a couple of years prior to that. He gets hurt, and the Ultimate Warrior beats the Honky Tonk Man in 27 seconds. As far as this match goes, Curt Hennig is a miracle worker. He is bumping his butt off. He does a couple of bumps over the turnbuckle that nobody was doing at the time, and he goes out of his way to make Brutus Beefcake look as good as he possibly can. I love this match, at least one part of it, when the commentary team decides, hey, let's give Curt Hennig's dad a subtle shout-out. Curt Hennig's dad, of course, Larry the Axe Hennig, big freaking dude. And it's alluded to the fact they talk about his old man, and Jesse Ventura goes, you going to call him an old man, gorilla? Just such a great line. Beefcake gets the win. I didn't like the booking there. I get Beefcake was over, but I'm going to pose a different scenario to you guys here. Say Perfect goes over. Say Perfect gets a little bit of a winning streak. Could he have potentially been a challenger for Warrior?
On TV, absolutely.
A bump for everybody. I want to see him taking a Warrior clothesline.
100%.
Sell. That would have been tremendous. It's unfortunate that he didn't get that kind of main event push when it was clear he was one of the best workers on the planet, when he was motivated, when his head was clear, and when he wasn't dealing with either injuries or personal demons.
Okay, next up. This one. Looking back on.
We had to get here, didn't we?
We did. We had to get here eventually. And looking back on this one was just wow. So it's Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown. We get the setup, the clips from the Royal Rumble where their feud started. And then Roddy Piper is backstage talking to Mean Gene. And it's a profile of Roddy. So he's talking to Mean Gene. You only see half of his body that looks completely normal, like nothing. And then he steps open, and you see that he is painted half black, and then the other half of him is just the normal Rowdy Roddy Piper. And that is from head to toe, all the way down. And he talked about how they made this like special solution for the paint so that way it wouldn't come off when he sweat, and that way it would be really strong. And actually, what's a funny story is that they had a special solution to take it off. And apparently Andre the Giant and somebody else stole
Arnold
it.
Skolin.
There
I
you
was
go,
going
Skolin,
to tell
yeah.
this story, and I am so thankful you did.
There you go. They stole the solution and poured it out, and they replaced it with water. So after the match, when he's going to try to get the black makeup off, it won't come off. He's got to go through customs from Canada back to the U.S. with all that makeup on, and it's on him, they said, for like almost an entire week before it was able to really start coming off. So Andre ribbing backstage, but from just a wow moment, Piper cuts this promo. And we know that when Piper, the thing that makes this bad is that we know when Piper was a heel, in 84, 85 and dealing with Hogan and Mr. T, he was very, very racist to Mr. T in many promos and many things. And this was a pretty bad one too. He says to Bad News Brown, you with them big bug eyes and that nasty gnarly veins and them out of proportion ears, and he's just cutting a promo on him. And it's a Roddy promo, but when you see it, it's one of those things when we watch back that it's kind of like, wow. Like, it's really eye-opening that they let this go down, and like there wasn't someone that was like, okay, Rowdy, like the gig is up. You're not going to paint yourself half black in this match.
Yeah, it really goes to show you just the difference in times. You forget about like there being fallout if you did this now. You can't do it now.
No,
like,
I mean,
nobody in their right mind would even suggest this in a meeting behind closed doors. I don't know. I was 6 years old. I don't know if people complained about it directly after the event. I have no idea. It's just very strange. I never, even knowing it as an adult, I never really understood what the significance of it was. I didn't get the point of it. I didn't understand why it had to be a part of the feud. A Rowdy feud is going to be good because he's nuts no matter what you do. But, you get what you figure you're going to get. You get a brawl. Rowdy is going to give you, his typical crazy punches and stuff outside. Bad News, we know how he can be when he has brawls too. And look, I mean, from the selling standpoint, they sold it good. These are two guys that just do not like each other. And, they fight up the ring, up the aisle. All the officials come down to break them up and everything. All of that's fine. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do from that standpoint. But the whole time you're watching the match, you just can't help think about, what else is going on. I mean, the glove. the glove on the hand. What is that? Like, what is it supposed to be? I don't understand. I'm just, look, they've done a lot of strange things. In fact, I was actually watching an old Raw the other night from before the Montreal Screwjob, where it's the famous kind of scene where Triple H and Bret Hart are in the ring. Triple H and HBK are in the ring, and they do that kind of like mouth open, looking back and forth at each other while Bret Hart is speaking. And Bret Hart calls them both the abbreviated word for homosexuals.
Oh, yeah, yes, I remember this, yeah.
This is 1997, so, again, another thing you can't possibly do today. But there's a lot of moments like this in the history of WWE that, looking back on, it's like, wow, man, they forget about pushing the envelope. They went so far over the line on some things. It's wild, and that's what I take away from this match more than anything else, unfortunately.
Who was this supposed to market to? That's
I
my
don't
big
know.
question.
Yeah.
And you go to the interview Piper did, and you wonder, this is the best they could do with Rowdy Roddy Piper, still a guy who had plenty of good years left with the company. This is the best they could do with Bad News Brown, a legitimate badass and an Olympic bronze medalist in judo. This is the best you can do. And then you put him in a match and you do a double count out? Like, this is a candidate, in my opinion, for one of the worst matches in the history of WrestleMania, because I can't tell you what the objective was. I can't tell you who it was supposed to market to. And right off the rip, you hear Gorilla Monsoon talking about this capacity crowd seems sort of hushed. And then very mysteriously, the crowd comes alive, even though everybody on the hard camera side is in their seats. You had to think somebody backstage who was controlling the crowd mic, probably the same guy that's in charge whenever Roman Reigns comes out to a capacity crowd now, was told, put the crowd mic up, put the crowd mic up. And he did, and it's so hokey, it's so tasteless, and these guys were capable of so much better with so many other guys. It's just one of those things that you wish you didn't have to rewatch, but because we're so devoted to our craft, for all of you listeners out there in podcast land, that's what we did. You're welcome.
Next was one of those things where I definitely appreciate it more on the rewatch. As a kid, like, anytime there's someone like Steve Allen on there, I'm just like not understanding his comedy or like what he's doing or what he's saying. But he does, he has a lot of misses, but there are some definite hits that he has in his few little spots. He has a little backstage segment with the Bolsheviks where he's going to play the Russian national anthem, and he keeps playing different songs and making fun of them, and they're getting mad, and they're in the bathroom, which was my favorite part of this. They couldn't find a room anywhere else. They're literally sitting in the bathroom because he's like underneath the shower, and you hear the toilet flush. So this was kind of goofy, but Steve Allen, he made me chuckle a couple times throughout the show, and then we just got, an absolute squash. This was, okay, hey, the Hearts are going to be the next team. We're building them up. We're for demolition now. They won this match after attacking the Bolsheviks, who were singing the Soviet national anthem. So they attack them from behind, and this match is over in 19 seconds after the heart attack finisher.
Right. Well, there's not much to talk about with the match. It does what it's supposed to do. It signifies, okay, these are the next guys. These are
how different from the two WrestleManias that we just talked about with Brett, though, right? This one versus 13 and 10.
Yeah. Now let's talk about. Now I'm glad you brought that up, because while I get what this is supposed to accomplish, and it does in elevating the Hart Foundation to being the next team, here's what bothers me. You take a look at the talent in this WrestleMania. Aside from Randy Savage, and I would argue even that Bret is probably a more technically sound wrestler than Savage, and Mr. Perfect. You have Bret Hart out of all of these wrestlers that are on this card in a match for 19 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I understand. I get it. It's the story. It's what it's supposed to do. Whatever. That's fine. But when you take a look at some of the guys that are working in this card, this is the match that you chose to be 19 seconds. In Canada, your first pay-per-view in Canada, your Canadian guy, one of the best wrestlers you have, is going to go in. He's going to put his hands on his hips because he doesn't like that they're singing the anthem. He's going to hit a heart attack, and he's gone. That's the part of it that bothers me. It always will, while I simultaneously understand the point of what it was supposed to do.
My argument here, and for the most part, Darren, I agree with you. Bret wasn't really Bret yet. He was still the tag team guy. He wasn't going to get pushed as the singles guy until after WrestleMania 7 when the Hart Foundation dropped the tag titles to the Nasty Boys. Then he was on with Mr. Perfect, and off Bret Hart went to do the great things that we all know he could do. But I like this for what it was. Bret was the Canada guy, and they give him a squash match win. I mean, you look at the Russians, you weren't going to be able to do a whole heck of a lot with these guys at this point. Nikolai Volkov was pretty well washed up. He could sing, but that was about all he could do. It's a one-bump match, and that's ultimately all they were going to be good for, to give them a payday. Brett looks really good. Jim Neidhart looks really good. And you've got the challengers for Demolition lined up. The tag matches on this show, there were a couple of them. We'll get to a few of them later on in the card. I found them pretty underwhelming considering the workers involved. And we'll get to one of those very shortly.
Yeah, well, and it was just a weird, go ahead, Darren. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that also speaks to my point. Just looking back on it, in my opinion, this match should have been a 15-minute match with the Hart Foundation versus the Rockers.
Yeah.
At WrestleMania. That's the match that should have happened.
And this show could have used a match like that. Right. Just like one like that was pretty, because there were some solid moments, but besides the Hogan Warrior, there wasn't really like a match that we would probably say is like legitimately good. We come up on the next match, which was, this is the highlight of the show for me, this one. And before that, they show those WrestleMania 7 previews, which are going to be at the Coliseum. And we get Tito Santana, who cuts a little promo backstage before his match with the Barbarian, and Jesse is drooling and foaming at the mouth as Chico Santana comes walking down the ring. He is just ready to absolutely unload on Chico. He is not out for 2 seconds, and Jesse says to Gorilla, "Don't you love Chico's music? It reminds me of the Blue Note Club in Tijuana." And Gorilla says, I think you must have picked something up down there, huh, Jess? And oh, yeah, I picked something up, a few things up. Let's start with Juanita. And he starts listing girls' names, which is just amazing. He also says that if Chico had been smart, he would have sent the Barbarian some of that food, because we could have counted on a count out in 2 minutes. The Barbarian would have had to leave the ring. It would have been called Chico's Revenge. I mean, he was just laying it on here with the puns. Hey, Gorilla, ever eat one of Chico's enchiladas? You're not normal for a week. Gorilla said the food, he likes that food, but it doesn't like him back. I mean, to me, that's what stood out about this. This was 4 minutes. They're trying to build up the Barbarian as a new heel, new member of the Heenan family. He, at one point, was a contender for the WCW Heavyweight Championship, I believe, against Ron Simmons, like not too long after this, like just about a year and a half, 2 years. And this was, Tito's good in the ring. He's always going to do a pretty good job with what he has. This is 4 minutes. He gets a little bit of offense. It's not like a complete squash. Tito does get a lot in this match, but the point of it is to kind of show that the Barbarian is this new big up-and-coming guy. And my final favorite line that I have to say before I hand it off to Darren, Gorilla says, "Tito can knock you out with a flying forearm," and Jesse says, "A burrito too."
Yeah, I don't know if they were all off the cuff or if he just had like a piece of paper, just like, and you could, as he says them, just starts crossing them off. Got that one. Juanita got that one. There's the burrito line. How many Chicos? 3, 4? I got to get up to 7. Throw another one here. I mean, he just unleashes. And again, it's more stuff that you could never do today. You could never do it today. Back then, But yeah, you touched on all that. The one thing that I took away from this match, so this is really just about a month or two after they split up Powers of Pain. Mm-hmm. They did a whole thing where Fuji said that they sold the contracts and so on and so forth. Now, the weird thing about this was, after this match, I thought they had positioned Barbarian to get a real push.
I agree.
Big, good-looking guy. And then he kind of doesn't do anything. Like, I don't remember him doing much of anything throughout 1990. I know in Survivor Series, later on, he actually ends up in a big spot. He ends up on the team against, the Hulkamaniacs, in a big spot in Survivor Series. And then, he has a match against the Big Boss Man at Royal Rumble 91 that he loses. And he kind of just, that's it. I mean, so that's the singles career for the Barbarian never really amounts to much. I did see him a couple of times in house shows. And he would win against, small guys, or I don't even remember who he would wrestle. He wasn't even putting over faces at that time. So he was getting a house show push, and the only thing I could think of is that the reaction at the house show was just lukewarm, and maybe they balked at the idea of pushing him. But and that's I take the one thing I take away from this match is he's set up to go on a push, gets the annual win over Tito at WrestleMania, delivers a vicious clothesline off the top rope for the finisher where Tito does a great sell, flips over on his neck, and then this is kind of it from here for the Barbarian for a while.
The Barbarian stuck around in WWF, and he was on the roster for the Royal Rumble where Flair won the title, because I remember Gorilla Monsoon's terrific line that he uttered solely to tick off Bobby Heenan in this hushed, subtle, worried tone. Barbarian doesn't like Flair. So he was still there, and he wound up in WCW where he was part of the Dungeon of Doom and ultimately part of a tag team with a guy he had tagged with before, except instead of the Powers of Pain, they were the Faces of Fear. Alliteration for you folks out there. This match was what it was. Tito Santana was a really good hand. I really hope he was in on all the stuff Gorilla.
He had to have been, right?
Saying.
Yeah.
He had to have been. But at the same time, you wonder if he watched some of the tapes back and walked up to the guys later and went, "Did you really have to say that?"
That hard.
It's so funny. But again, it's stuff you can't do now. You can't get within a toll call of that now. It's just stuff that's incomprehensible 30 years later. For its time, it was funny, and you could tell Jesse was licking his chops.
And he was pumped up for the next match, too. It was like it carried on over, because it was like his two favorite were literally back-to-back, where he just got to say everything he wanted to say. So the Barbarian gets the win, 4 minutes and 33 seconds here. And then we get the build-up to the first ever. They were really laying it on that it was the first ever mixed tag match. We have Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire versus King Macho King Randy Savage at the time, and the sensational Queen Sherry. So Dusty and Sapphire, they cut a little promo. They talk about how they have the crown jewel. There was a surprise for this match. Nobody knew what that meant. And Macho, really cool entrance, as we would get when he was the Macho King. This was like really cool, like WrestleMania entrance. And then Dusty comes down, and he says that he's got a surprise, and he brings out Miss Elizabeth. So Miss Elizabeth is the surprise here. But before we even get to that, Jesse is just same thing. It's like he's waiting for Sapphire to come out, and he at one point right off the bat they announced the weights when Jesse and
that was savage.
They're walking down and they announced the weight of Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire together. And he is flabbergasted that they are announced at 465. He says Sapphire is 250 by herself. So what? That means Dusty Rhodes 200? I mean, 565, maybe I could believe this. So he is just hilarious. Gorilla at one point says Savage and Sherry are going to have their hands full, and he says literally tons of fun. and he says Sherry looks like she's wearing something from Snow White, and Jesse says, and the other two are two of the seven dwarves. I mean, he was just loving this. He was talking about how Elizabeth loves the camera, and then he just literally says, "Do I really have to look at Sapphire?" I mean, he just like, hasn't Sapphire ever heard of Slim Fast? I mean, could you imagine doing this like in this day and age with like, I mean, he says, this, and then he starts explaining the rules. This is the first ever mixed tag match. He's explaining the rules. He says, the men can only face the men when there's a tag. The women face the women. He says, which I don't really understand with all the women's empowerment stuff out there. I'd love to see Macho versus Sapphire in here. I mean, these two matches, like looking back, might have been two of the more controversial ones because of the thing, but he was having a blast. And at the time, like we said, it's so weird because it's not like it's just it's like eye-opening to see how much things have changed. This isn't 50 years ago. I mean, this is 30 years ago. And I I mean, we get a fun, but this was another like match that if we got Macho versus Dusty here for like 15, they could have had a really good match. You know, even Dusty could still go at this point in the right match with the right person. He could, but their feud was more kind of about the story. It was Miss Elizabeth, and then DiBiase got involved later with the Sapphire stuff. So this was more of the fun. This wasn't what we had kind of gotten used to with Macho the previous few years, where he was involved in some really good matches and like some manias kind of built around him. But this was, you know, WrestleMania moment to get Elizabeth out there, who actually kind of got involved. We didn't see Elizabeth really get involved in matches. You know, like I remember, you know, she took her skirt off the one time and would maybe distract someone, but we rarely saw her actually like use her hands or push someone. And she did that, and that kind of set up the victory here at 7 minutes and 52 seconds. So Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire get the win, and they're able to celebrate with the Miss Elizabeth afterwards.
So, yeah, this is one of those matches where if I look at it from a 2020 booking standpoint, I have problems with it. You know, because when you take a look at this card, the weird booking of Perfect and Beefcake, having Bret Hart wrestle for 19 seconds, and now you have your other big talent in a mixed tag match. So I look at this and say, why couldn't this be Savage versus Dusty with, you know, Sapphire and Elizabeth comes out at some point, you know, and Sherry's outside. But when you watch the match, the crowd is into the whole mixed tag element of the match. And they do keep doing the whole, you know, Savage bumping into Sherry thing and Sherry bumping into Savage thing. And it works, and the crowd's into it, and I get it. But me looking back on the match selfishly, I would have preferred to have just seen Savage and Dusty, because I don't need to see Sapphire bounce around and do a, you know, butt check to Sherry's face and bounce around and do a butt check to her face and then, you know, try to do some kind of a flip where she ends up like literally gently placing her on the canvas because, you know, Sapphire really can't do anything in the ring. You know, it's fun. I get it. But me being the traditional wrestling, I want to see Savage work a Savage WrestleMania match, this left me feeling like I wanted a bit more.
You know, I came into this thinking I was going to be the one to have the novel idea, why couldn't we just have Savage against Dusty? That would have been great. And both of you beat me to it. You jerks. Anyway, for its time, it was fine. I get where they were going. And to her undying credit, Sherry Martel bumped like a mad woman for Sapphire, trying to get her over. Every butt check, Sherry is selling that like she just got hit by a tank. She tried. The problem was they make a big deal at the start of the match talking about the rules of a mixed tag match. They go out the window halfway through.
They count a pin. They count a cover. When she covers Dusty, they count. Sherry counts. Like, why is the ref counting?
It's as if the referee just gave up and said, do whatever you want, you know, whatever. And that just, it didn't land for me.
No,
now,
I agree.
Dusty being what he was as a worker at that point, it's arguable how much Savage was going to be able to get out of him. But if anyone was going to get Dusty to channel early to mid-'80s Dusty in a big spot, it was going to be Randy Savage. Those two could have put together a really good one-on-one match with Sherry on one side, Sapphire on the outside, and oh, look, there's Elizabeth coming up the ramp. Savage gets distracted. Dusty hits the elbow. Dusty wins. Everybody's, you know, all happy. Savage doesn't lose anything. It winds up being a situation where Sherry's the one that has to take the pinfall. Yes, Elizabeth gets involved. It's a cool moment. It's not a terrible match. It just could have been so much better. And the other visual I remember is Elizabeth dancing with Dusty and Sapphire afterwards, and it looks like she has two left feet.
I know, right? She just was not, she never looked comfortable, right? No. She looked uncomfortable a lot of the time when she was in there. Which if and early on, that's like the role she was supposed to play, kind of shy and unassuming, as Macho was more heelish, and but she just never really took it and ran. Even when late, unfortunately, what happened to her later in her life, and when she was in WCW, and they kind of turned her into this trashy character, she just still didn't seem comfortable. She always seemed like she was acting and kind of putting it on, which is, it's funny because we weren't used, there were no women, and she was such a big part of them. But when you look back and dissect all the segments and all the time she's on the screen, she's definitely not she's gorgeous, and she was such a big part of the whole thing, but she's definitely not charismatic, in the least. But yeah, the awkward dancing to close things out. And then basically this was when they had intermission. So we get this stream of promos. First it's Mean Gene talking to Bobby. He almost said, at one point he kind of caught himself again. He had a running joke. He was going to say something with Bobby, then he kind of stopped himself, and Bobby looked up at him, and they were having fun all throughout the night. And then they did a backstage segment with Gorilla and Jesse talking to that Rona Barrett, the gossip columnist. She kind of mentioned that I think because Jesse had kind of talked trash on her earlier in the show, she said something about she had some kind of a footage with alluding that Jesse was in some kind of a porno. And then we get Sean Mooney talking to Savage and Sherry. They are just screaming like crazy, which was really funny. They were going absolutely ballistic. And then we get Mean Gene talking to Demolition. They mentioned the Hart Foundation, kind of set up their next one. So before we get to the two big promos after that, any of these things that you kind of dislike, or were funny that stood out to you, Darren?
I mean, Sherry throwing her temper tantrum is always funny. She looks like she's having convulsions. I thought the Demolition program, did its job. The promo that they did, in terms of what they were doing and what they were setting up for the future. Then you have the Warrior promo, which is just, after Hogan. I mean, one of the epic Warrior promos where 10 seconds in, you have no idea what the hell he's talking about. It's just, he just starts rambling and going on. And, I'm looking at him, and he looks like he's fresh out of a 80s rock, video with the big blown out hair. Don't really care what he's saying. Juiced out of his mind. The tassels have never been tighter. Clenching his hands together like almost in prayer, and doing his thing with the Hulkamaniacs and the Warriors. It's just what is going on? But it's what Warrior is supposed to be. And it takes us, to the point, the second half of the show, where at this point we're getting close to the main event. And as a little kid, I'm starting to, climb out of my skin, hoping that it's Warriors Day. So for me, the little kid, the promo did the job. If I was 35 years old watching that, I'll probably think to myself, oh my God, what the hell is this?
I have two notes. One of them alludes back to something that we talked about earlier. But the first is, can we discuss Sean Mooney's mullet? I mean, this was 1990, so we're several years past the peak of the mullet. I would argue the mullet peaked 85, 86, 87.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're several years past that. But Sean Mooney is a mullet loyalist. And if you look at this, it's magical how this guy's head of hair looked the way that it did on a big stage, with him trying to look incredibly formal as the backstage interviewer type. And then you look at his hair and it's whoop. I mean, my goodness, it's no wonder this guy got a run on the Edge and Christian show where they were pretty much vociferously making fun of him and all of his tendencies. It's just, the guy was a walking punchline at this point. And some of it he brought on himself. But on a more serious note, I thought about bringing this up earlier. I figured I'd bring it up now. Gino, you'd mentioned Hogan's promo here sounding a lot like Warrior's promo on the Raw right before he passed away. I firmly believe Warrior gave that promo knowing he was going to die. So I don't know if it was channeling that or channeling something else, or if it was just Warrior getting a microphone and having no idea what he was going to say and just rolling with it. Having said that, when I was listening to Hogan's thing, it did take me back to Warrior's promo on Raw a couple of years ago, right before he passed away. And you're right, the similarities are eerie. And you look at what happened with Hogan after this. This was supposed to be where Hogan was, I don't want to say phased out, but he wasn't the almighty top guy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to create other guys. There were rumblings that Hogan was going to Hollywood full-time. He said he had a whole bunch of gigs lined up. Of course, a year later, he's back winning the world title again, so we all know how that wound up. But it's weird, and the more you listen to these promos, the more you go down into a rabbit hole trying to figure out what the heck are these people saying? And the moment you start rationalizing why they make sense, you need to shut your TV off. Just trust me on this.
This, the Hogan promo, which comes and two, it's so funny. You know, if you didn't know he was going to lose, you knew he was going to lose when you heard this promo. When did you ever hear Hulk Hogan say something, and he spinned it okay at the end, but when did you ever hear him say something that, like, it doesn't matter when you win or you lose. The only thing that matters is what kind of a winner you are or what kind of a loser you are, which was actually a lot of the story of the main event match at the end. And, you know, Gorilla even has his line after, you know, immortality, and we saw Hogan, we talk about, you know, with Brett getting Austin over, this might have been one of the greatest things that Hogan did, like firmly supplanting Warrior for a little while, like on the level with him. But it's weird knowing that he's going to lose. It's like you heard that promo and it's like, he's going to lose. You know, you could just tell not knowing how Hogan felt about it at the time, you know, who knows, but it's not like he did his part beautifully, like as well as he possibly could. And then we get the Warrior promo, which this is my all-time favorite Warrior promo. I think because when we talk about the Warrior promos overall, they're all, for the most part, pretty gibberish. But the first, like, half of this one is actually, like, a pretty good, like, rebuttal to Hogan and pretty kind of, like, focused. I don't recall him rarely cutting promos on the individuals that he was going to wrestle. It was more like he would cut a promo on, oh, the Warriors are following me and here we come, you know, that kind of a thing. This was actually what I liked. He was putting over Hogan in the promo and saying that, you know what, like, am I stronger? Are you stronger? He's going with all this weird, you know, way that he's kind of like comparing it, but it's my favorite one of his because he was on all night this night, and he, you know, when I watch him work in the ring in that main event match, when we get there, the one thing that I not got mad at, but I was like, damn, like he had a little more in him than, I don't know what it was. Maybe he just didn't want to do it, or a lot of it wasn't his character or whatever it was. But like he had some nice clean suplexes. Like there was a little more that he could have busted out in his repertoire on a day-to-day basis that we didn't really see from him. And I was just really impressed with him on the, again, you know, this was his night. And he nailed it. I mean, he hit a grand slam. This was like that night built around the Warrior. And from this promo, which, you know, ends up, and then he kind of goes off the deep end a little towards the end. But I like it. It was more like, you know, his legacy, talking about the legacy and the beliefs of, you know, what's going to happen to you, Hogan. What do you want your legacy to be? Which, you know, was a lot for the Warrior at this point. Then we get into, quote unquote, the second half of the show. And this next match was good. Right, it's solid. Like the Rockers, pretty much anything the Rockers at this time period is going to be super innovative. You see why everybody was really high on Shawn. Marty's super good at this point. But the only thing that leaves a weird taste in my mouth with this match is that we get a much better version of this match at the 91 Royal Rumble, where we get the Orient Express versus the Rockers, and that match is like a steal the show kind of match that is like one of those, you know, hidden classics that people talk about. There's nothing wrong with this match whatsoever. I'm just, you know, bummed because I know that they can get better, and they do, you know, maybe it's after working with each other for a while, because Shawn Michaels had a lot of history with these guys.
Yeah, no, he did. There's no question about it. And if you know the story of the Rockers and how they came up, we've talked about it before. I agree. I mean, looking at, you know, it was fun. There was a couple of really cool bumps. Shawn delivered one clothesline. The guy did a 360 in midair. There were some cool spots, but again, these are guys that you would have wanted more than a 6-minute. You know what I mean? These are guys that, they could have gone out there for 15, 16, 18 minutes and really, lit the match up. It went about 7.5, and, Shawn Michaels is just getting warmed up at 7.5 minutes. I would have liked to have seen a little more from it as well. The Fuji involvement and how it ends. Okay, whatever. There's a couple of cool spots. Double back body drop was a cool spot as well. But I view it the same way you did. And again, I still come away from this thinking that I would have wanted to see the Rockers and the Hart Foundation in an epic match here. But stay lovely.
This match was a victim of a couple of things to me. For one, it was right after intermission, so they had to get the crowd fired up again. So right away, they're playing from behind. What I didn't like, right from the rip, you hear the Rockers theme music. You're expecting these two energetic guys. If anyone on the roster shouldn't have been using the carts, it was those guys.
Yep.
Because they're just standing there as their music plays, trying to hype up the crowd. You don't need the cart for those guys. These guys are supposed to be the two young, energetic guys firing up the kids. You didn't need the cart. And to me, that just seemed like overbooking. The match wasn't bad, but it seemed like everyone was going into second gear, and I hated the finish. Jannetty gets counted out. We couldn't get a legitimate clean finish one way or the other here in a way that wouldn't have hurt either team. Come on, guys. This isn't hard. I don't understand the need to have that kind of a finish at WrestleMania for what is essentially a second opening match.
They were just trying to protect everyone on this show. You know what I mean?
A crowd that wants to cheer these things. Are you really trying to protect the Orient freaking Express? Give the Rockers a win in that 8 minutes, have them win clean, do one of their finishers off the top rope that the Young Bucks still use as transition moves in every match today, and that's how you fire up a crowd. But to me, this was a victim of bad placement on the show, and it got worse from there.
So, poor Greg Valentine coming up after this.
Poor Greg Valentine. This is the peak of his career.
Greg Valentine, who, was always a solid worker, Intercontinental Champion. He had some good, his 80s into the beginning part of the 90s. Very, very good run in the WWF. Did some good work before that, but wow. He is placed now in a tag team with the Honky Tonk Man. They are called Rhythm and Blues. He has black hair at the moment, and he's playing a guitar. And it's funny, when I was talking with Jason Beam about this today, we were talking about WrestleMania 4, and he said the best part about Honky was that he could never just learn one or two chords. You would have thought that with, just like Elias, or just to be able to play a chord or two, that was what made it even better, that Honky was so awful and just couldn't even convincingly hold that guitar like someone who would play it. And poor Greg Valentine was just miserable in this role. Steve Allen was funny though. He their song is Hunka Hunka Burning Love. He says something like, we have one of the hottest bands, we're going to catch up with one of the hottest bands in the world, but they're not here, so we have these guys instead. And when Honky asks him if he's excited to hear their song, he said he hasn't been this excited since he found out that Pee Wee Herman was straight. So this was just we're going to see them in a minute, and we'll talk about that when they come out in the ring, Rhythm and Blues. Up next, we got Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Dino Bravo with Jimmy Hart and Earthquake. And right away, Gorilla has to let us know that Earthquake shouldn't be out there because he cannot have a manager's license and a wrestler's license simultaneously, Darren.
Oh, the controversy. Always controversy. Somebody get somebody out here to get rid of this guy.
I'm just saying, it's Earthquake. That's the ability that he had to be able to
big
do
guy
that without a license.
Big guy that can move.
Big guy that can move.
Mark off your Gino bingo cards right here.
Look, I don't want to be too hard on anybody. This match is 4 minutes and 15 seconds. It's 4 minutes and 14 seconds too long.
Yep.
we know what Duggan can't do in a ring. Dino Bravo is well past his prime. By the way, Dino, his wrestling style always has kind of been as this big bruiser. But if you do watch his stuff from Canada in the late 70s and early 80s, it's pretty good. The Dino Bravo that you get in the late 80s into the early 90s in the WWE is not the Dino Bravo that you'll see from 10, 12 years earlier. But the moves are so slow, methodical, stiff,
telegraphed. Yeah,
it's just awful, and I feel bad saying that. The fact that Dino Bravo loses to Hacksaw Jim Duggan, is just wild to me. But that's really all I could say about it. I wish I had a positive note about the match, but there is a big guy that can move on the outside, so there's that.
Here's what I found hilarious, and this became a running gag. Hacksaw tries to get a USA
Thank you.
Going
I'm so glad you mentioned this.
in Toronto.
And the best is that Dino Bravo is booked as the Canadian strongman, and Earthquake was initially the Canadian Earthquake. The dynamic was just completely bass-ackwards, is what they said.
Yeah.
It was...
Now, the one thing that I will say about this match is I liked the finish. They bring the 2x4 in. Bravo is going to use it, except he winds up hoisted on his own petard, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan uses the 2x4, whacks Bravo over the head, and winds up getting the win. At the very least, they ended with some clever storytelling. Before that, the match was terrible. But at the very least, this match had what a lot of matches on this show didn't have. It had a decent finish.
And then Duggan would get kind of set up. This was again kind of building Earthquake. This was even more about building Earthquake than it was this match, because Duggan and Earthquake would have a little bit of a feud before Earthquake went on to hook up with Hogan. Then we get Mean Gene talking to Jake. This was
so good. This is so good.
Oh, this promo is so great. Jake the Snake's backstage. He cuts his promo, and he's talking about all the things that the $1 Million Man has done through the years, how he's embarrassed people, and how he's made people do things for money. And he says he's going to humble him. He calls him a victim of his own greed. He says, this is the most important match of your career because your money, your belt is on the line. I mean, this was like one of those goosebumps promos, and it's not the longest thing in the world. Make a minute and a half, not even 2 minutes, but he just sets in the 2 minutes, he sets everything up for all the okay, this is what you're going to do. This is why you're going to do. I mean, this was awesome. Love this.
Yeah. Well, it's just typical Jake promo. It's, this is what you get from him. His delivery, his speaking tone, it just sends chills down your spine when he does these things. And we talked about it before, and looking back on it, there were never more over guys than Jake. Wherever he went, they loved him, and rightfully so. Good worker, great on the microphone, amazing presence, phenomenal character, bringing the Snake to the ring. It all just worked. And, the weird thing about Jake is, he's never given a belt.
No.
But he's one of those characters that really doesn't need the belt. He's better as a chaser. He's better as the guy lurking in the weeds. He's the boogeyman who's going to get you late at night. And that's what this entire Jake, thing is about going into this match with DiBiase. And it was kind of, looking back on it, you couldn't really, you couldn't really put $1 million belt on Jake the Snake Roberts.
And that's where they were handcuffed a little bit.
Yeah. You couldn't really do it, but at the same time, you don't want him to lose, So they almost painted themselves into a corner. The booking from that standpoint is a little bit weird. I do love the ending where Jake, starts to pick up the money, hands it to the people outside and everything. But yeah, I do think they kind of painted themselves into a corner with that, because the whole $1 million belt on Jake doesn't work, and Virgil takes off with the belt and everything. But it's a good match. You get the DDT at the end. You get the big pop from the DDT. By the way, one thing I never mentioned with Jake, and this is my last thing, and this is just a random thing. Don't ask me why, but for some reason, I loved his short arm clothesline.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so great.
It's such a simple move, and it's one of the things that Andrew says. You don't have to overcomplicate things. That short arm clothesline, when he would wind that up and whip it in and hit it, was one of my favorite moves that I loved all the time. And, he delivered it, tremendously every time. But, I mean, I like the match. The finish has to be what it has to be. But, Jake goes over, gets the big pop. $1 Million Man's left laying in the ring. Jake's handing out the money. It's what we needed it to be because you couldn't put that belt on Jake.
Couple of notes here. If this promo sounds familiar to any of you out there and you're trying to place it, chances are you saw this promo in Beyond the Mat.
Yeah.
This was the Jake promo that they chose above everything else that he did with the World Wrestling Federation in that initial run. And there's a reason for that. As Gene Okerlund said, Longfellow couldn't have said it any better. And you could tell he was taken aback by what Jake said. He didn't have to do anything. Jake did all the legwork for him. That's the easiest money Gene Okerlund ever made in his life. Now, the match. Darren, you mentioned it. They booked themselves into a corner. I didn't like this match as much as you guys did.
Well, I don't really love the match either. It's a little slow.
Holds.
And that's what was frustrating. And I've noticed this with some of these rewatches as of late. The guys that have disappointed me a little, and I know it was more about their character, and it's because I know they can go, are Jake and Rude when I've rewatched them more, because we just rewatched WrestleMania 4 where they have that 15-minute draw, which is literally like 6 minutes, 7 minutes of being in an armbar, and it's similar here where there's not a lot till the end. And this does go, 11 minutes and 50 seconds. It was just like, I know these guys could go a little bit quicker, faster. It just must have been, let's set this up. I was a little more disappointed with it too, because I was expecting more, like, especially coming off that promo. It got me really pumped for the match, and I love both of these guys overall. But it didn't, this was like a single to me. It didn't really get more than that.
Yeah, and after that promo, you're expecting something incredibly hot. Jake hits the DDT at some point, whatever. Instead, you get a lot of rest holds. You get the crowd doing the wave. Now, 30 years later, if a crowd does the wave at a WWE event, it is death. I know this because I was at the Raw after WrestleMania in San Jose when we all did the wave during the 6-man tag match in the main event that had Roman Reigns and Ryback as part of the winning team. Now, the other thing that we get, and this is one of those Jesse and Gorilla things, we get references to hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Gorilla Monsoon ate a hot dog during intermission, and Jesse did not let Gorilla live it down. It is so good, and you can hear Gorilla Monsoon having to refrain from busting up laughing as they're going back and forth with DiBiase and Jake in rest hold after rest hold after rest hold. To me, that was entertaining. Yes. However, running gag alert, did you notice the money that Jake handed out after the match? What money was it?
American money.
It was American money in Toronto. My goodness. At the very least, go find some $20 Canadian bills and give those out. This isn't hard.
These poor people.
I don't know what Canadian money looked like in 1990, but Canadian money right now is awesome.
I love it. It's fantastic.
It's like Picasso, painted a portrait and put a hologram in it. I mean, Canadian money is so much cooler than American money. It's not even close.
I think the moment it was Andrew was when the crowd was doing the wave and Jesse said, Gorilla, it's coming right back at us. Oh, he says Gorilla couldn't stand up because he had too many of the hot dogs. He couldn't even stand up for the wave. So he was getting him all throughout the show with that hot dog gag, which is just hilarious. I think you had 7 of them, Gorilla. We then get to, the post-match with, Jake celebrating, which again, it's like it's a bummer because if there's no belt here, I guarantee you Jake just gets a clean win. Because that's what he gets it back afterwards. He gets over on DiBiase. He puts the money in his mouth. He gets the snake out, and then Virgil comes back and gets him. So he's like everything that we want for the babyface to get his his pop at the end, but they just didn't want to give him that belt at the time. And then we get to the Slick promo with Akeem, and I did kind of like what they did here. $1 Million Man had this thing going with Big Boss Man where he was trying to buy the Big Boss Man's contract. He refused, so the Big Boss Man turned from heel to a face, and DiBiase was still out ringside when this match starts, and he actually attacks Big Boss Man prior to the match. It's kind of a little something different that you don't see. It made sense to put these two matches like right next to each other because there was some overlapping storyline in here. And I mean, that's really the only positive I have to say. Akeem, at this point especially, could not do a whole heck of a lot. He was fine in some of his early one-man gang days. And, the Twin Towers, Hogan, Savage stuff, there was some okay stuff there. Boss Man was definitely the better of the workers, though, and this was giving Boss Man a big push. So, Andrew, big man that can work. We got a couple, but just one of them that can work.
I got something else before we go in too much further.
Okay.
The dueling promos. What's Big Boss Man's last line? He says he's proud to be an American
in Canada.
Toronto!
Which is just amazing. I know. Repeatedly.
Did they think this was in New Jersey?
I know. And it's like the fans just kind of are like, the Hacksaw one is great because that was like the fans are like, what the hell are we supposed to do here? We're not. It was so weird.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad promo other than that, but it was very clear that the Big Boss Man had rehearsed about 50 seconds of a 1-minute promo, and he needed to fill the last 10 seconds with something. And he winds up filling it with that in Toronto. Now, the match itself, it's nothing to write home about. The angle with DiBiase is pretty cool because he outsmarts people by staying by ringside and jumping Boss Man, throwing him in the ring. Boss Man winds up rallying, hits the Boss Man slam on the big, huge Akeem. Crowd gets a nice pop. Boss Man's theme music, by the way, after a couple WrestleManias, starting to grow on me.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
It's a good tune.
Yeah, this wasn't much, Darren, just super squashy. And Boss Man was kind of a fun, mid-card babyface character after this. He had a good little run for a couple years.
Yeah. One of the things with Akeem, a character that I never understood. He wore this kind of blue outfit with the African continent on his back. And, is he supposed to be South African because he's not an African American? So I never got that part of the character. He's doing the crazy hand jive gestures.
Wasn't the rumor that it was supposed to be a rib on Dusty?
Yes, that's
before
exactly
Dusty
what
came over. And it was like he's doing the Dusty dance and how Dusty kind of talks like he's an African American, talks in that kind of So I think there was a running inside joke on that, as far as at least the story that I had heard.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. So they split up the Twin Towers before this. The whole thing you talked about, buying the contract. Boss Man, gets aggravated with Slick for taking credit for everything. Turns on everybody. You get this match. This is, I think, the last pay-per-view match you get for the one-man gang / Akeem. He actually shows up at WCW the following year as the one-man gang and attacks Ron Simmons, I believe.
He gets a main event push, too. He's in a title match, I think, at one point, whether it's with Flair or someone, someone, yeah.
Yeah. So he goes back to WCW and then, stays there, shows back up again years later, and he has a run, and then he starts doing the independent stuff again. But he was pretty well done here. But yeah, this is the start of Boss Man, getting the big push, gets a big win here, going to move forward. He has some, big matches coming up in the not too distant future. They turn him face, and he's also one of those guys that doesn't get a belt as a singles wrestler, but he's super over.
He's the Brutus, the Brutus category.
I'd argue he should have been the Intercontinental Champion at WrestleMania 7. I think that should have been his moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And by the way, to Andrew's point, SummerSlam 91, and again, there were some monstrous pops there. When Brett won, when LOD won. But one of the biggest pops of the night was when Big Boss Man beat the Mountie, and the Mountie went off to the Slammer.
That was that was a great feud, too. That was fun.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, a huge over guy. I used to love his punches, those quick jabs. They always look like they caught flush. And I will give you this. Big Boss Man was a big guy that could move that I liked.
We need to turn this into a drinking game for college students. I feel like some of them wouldn't last throughout an entire WrestleMania review. If you're out there and you want to take us up on the challenge, our Twitter DMs are open.
There we go. We gotta figure something out for that for sure. We get to poor Mary Tyler Moore. So Sean Moody's in the crowd. He's interviewing
and
people.
So is his mullet. Sean Moody's mullet is in the crowd.
The kid that he interviews, the first kid, is hilarious. He asks the kid about rhythm and blues and their big single, and the kid is like, "They stink. They can't do anything." I mean, the kid is just hilarious. He's just got a big personality. You could tell right away. And then they get to poor Mary Tyler Moore, and the first question or two they ask her, she's completely fine. That's it. Like, you got what you needed. Mary Tyler Moore's here. How do you like it, Mary Tyler? And she's like, "Oh, this is great. It's the perfect combination of like athleticism and theater. We love it. Oh, hey, we're going to be in LA next year. Do we expect to see you? Of course. Count me in. I'm there." Like, boom, that's it. And then he just kept going on. He wanted to ask about rhythm and blues, and he's asking her questions about the Honky Tonk Man, and she has no idea who the hell the Honky Tonk Man or Greg Valentine or what Hunka Burning Love are. Poor girl. I mean, she's just sitting there like, It was bad.
Yeah, it's I'm with you. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. I watched this back, and it's almost like I feel uncomfortable watching it especially because of Valentine. Honky Tonk is only 2 years removed from his big Intercontinental Championship run, and these guys are just kind of like the joke of the day. You get run out of the ring by the Bushwhackers at WrestleMania. I mean, it's just one of those things where it just leaves me flat. I think it took Luke about 3 times to smash the guitar before it actually broke. And, everybody reacts to the Bushwhackers. I'm a weird guy. I'm not into dumb comedy. Like, I can't, some Will Ferrell movies I'll get and I'll like, but the real stupid ones, it's just not my shtick. The Bushwhackers were just never my thing, And I even as a kid, I was not the kid walking around doing the Bushwhacker walk and,
So you mean in the coronavirus world, you wouldn't want to get licked in the head by one of the Bushwhackers?
Oh, no. even in a pre-coronavirus world, no. It just wasn't my thing. And this was, to be honest with you, when this spot came on, I went downstairs and made myself a cup of tea and didn't even pause it on the WWE Network.
Okay, you're in trouble when the guy who had the best career out of anybody in this segment is the guy driving the Cadillac.
Yep.
For those of you who do not know, yes, Diamond Dallas Page got this job because he had a pink Cadillac and would drive it to Toronto. That is how you get on WrestleMania, kids. Now, I don't know who this segment was booked to please. Probably Vince. I don't understand the appeal. Honky Tonk Man was doing his usual shtick. The one time I did laugh was when the backup singers were fawning over Honky Tonk Man, and then Honky Tonk turns to Jimmy Hart, and Jimmy Hart tries to turn it into a contest as to who can fawn over the Honky Tonk Man the most. That part I chuckled at. But my goodness, this was a 6-7 minute segment, and I'm just looking at my watch wondering, okay, so there's about 45 minutes left in the show. When do we get to Hogan? Wait a minute. You're telling me there's several more matches before we even get to Hogan and Warrior? Come on!
This was awful. This is gonna go down as one of the worst segments in WrestleMania history. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad, and you just kind of can giggle a little bit and laugh. And I feel so bad for Valentine. I don't want to spend any more time talking about that one. We get the announcement 67,678, which at the time was a record there. And then Steve Allen joins us for commentary for the Rick Rude Jimmy Snuka match. He was pretty funny in here. Steve Allen, he made a comment at one point that like Snuka was wearing his wife's underwear, which I got to laugh at, and he was definitely someone who was like, self-deprecating and was taking shots at wrestling, but it's funny. It was fine. This was a quick match. It's to build up Rude because he's going to be facing the Warrior in the main event at SummerSlam coming up later this year, and he's going to have a good little run with Warrior. And one thing I did like Snuka doing the ravishing dance, but this is weird to watch a match like this with like all the stuff that's out there about Snuka. And, unfortunately, Rude's passed away now, and you have Heenan there too. So it's just like some of these matches I get sad when I watch back. Looking back, I definitely expected more out of Rude in spots than I got from him in the WWF. Now, he had some moments, and he had some good stuff with the Warrior for the most part, but I think a lot of his best work was in WCW as far as like match quality. A lot of it's just so damn slow. And it's like restful, like we were just saying with Jake, slow, like nothing great. He had the fun tights on, and he does his shtick. He's a good heel, but the matches are just eh.
I agree. On the Snuka stuff, to be honest with you, it was one of the only things I could think about watching the match because we just saw the Viceland documentary a week and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
While I knew the backstory to it, and I knew, what had gone on in terms of just the headline, I didn't know the actual story of it. And so it's kind of disturbing to watch Snuka now, knowing what we know. Now, that being said, I agree with you about the match. I agree with you about Rude. And a part of the thought process that I have is that I think it's the booking.
Yeah.
He's put in feuds with Warrior when Warrior is both Intercontinental Champion and WWE Champion. Rude is a guy that could work, can do some high-flying stuff, can move around. He's quick. While he's cut up and he's jacked, he's also very agile. He could take good-looking bumps. And, while the feud with Warrior was good, that's just not the guy that's going to give him the best matches. And when he goes to WCW after this, and keep in mind he also had a bit of a stint in All Japan. He ends up he's in the Dangerous Alliance. He has a big feud with Steamboat. He's put in matches I think that just work better for him, and I think that's what it comes down to. And I agree with you. I enjoyed his work in WCW more than WWE.
It's a different kind of work. Now, the thing that Rude had going for him that proved to be both a blessing and a curse is they discovered he and the Ultimate Warrior had this freakishly good chemistry.
Yep.
Which was awe-striking in large part because, depending on who you believe, those two did not like one another.
Mm-hmm.
There's stories of backstage fights where Rick Rude, a legit tough guy, was knocking Warrior out in one.
Well, and I think Hogan didn't like him either. So you know what? Think like talking this out now with both, that may be why he didn't like it or he didn't really succeed a whole lot at this era. I mean, if you're not, in quote unquote in bed with Hogan and Warrior, you're probably not going to be in great shape.
Yeah, and he had his spot where he did a lot of really cool things. The stuff with Jake Roberts' wife on his tights, that's classic heel work right there. That's stuff that if MJF did it tomorrow, everybody on the internet would be talking about it. And to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody who's feuding with Cody Rhodes does that with Brandy as a throwback because it would still work. But Rick Rude was a guy who, at least in WWF, didn't really get his fair shake as a worker. Mm-hmm. They realized that he had a lot of talent. They realized they could put him with pretty much anybody, but he wasn't all that big, and that hurt him a little bit. And also, for a little while, he was over enough to be the guy that didn't need the title. He was sort of the heel version of a guy like Boss Man or a guy like Beefcake, just an upper mid-card guy that was there that you could plug and play with pretty much anybody. Now he went to WCW and arguably became the best worker on the roster, not named Ric Flair. Now that's pretty darn cool for everything that he wound up doing there. He worked with Sting, he worked with Steamboat, really good stuff, and a different kind of worker showed up. You can tell that he was trying to do something different than what got him to the dance. Unfortunately, he passed away, as rumor was he was attempting to train for a return to the ring in the late 1990s alongside Kurt Hennig at WCW. That's incredibly unfortunate. He was very young at the time. I think he was only in his early 40s. Number of years where he could have come back had his health cooperated. But in this spot, it's your basic squash match trying to make Rick Rude. And I'll agree, watching Jimmy Snuka now, it's weird.
Yeah. And then we get the big one. And we get the setup for the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan. And we get the intros. Warrior runs down to the ring. And the one thing that I noticed, like generally you get matches nowadays where if it's like babyface, like the crowd kind of picks, right? Like who one of the two. Man, this crowd was definitely like there weren't a lot of boo. They were hot for both guys. That's what was really cool about this match is that it really was like the 1 and 1A or like 1A and 1B at the time as far as like fan favorites. People just loved the Warrior at this point. I mean, he was hot, and I don't think these guys, and by say I don't think, I sure as hell know that these guys couldn't do a better version of this match because they tried to do this match later, obviously when they weren't, under Vince McMahon's wings and when they weren't, in their best shape. This match was damn good. I believe it won the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Match of the Year. This is quality. I mean, you see Warrior do things in this match that you only see him maybe do in like the Savage match and very other few matches, maybe a couple of the ones with Rude that you were mentioning, Andrew. This is good. We get all of the goofy, big strongman spots. We get the stare down at the beginning. We get the test of strength. We get, the crisscross and the double clothesline. And then, Hogan gets looks like he's hurt a little bit and he's outside. And they both have the moment where it looks like they're going to do something kind of heelish. And Jesse is awesome, like telling the story all throughout this match. Like we can all pick out a bunch of Hulk and Ultimate Warrior matches that aren't that great. And, some people can say they like them or don't like them for some of their beliefs and some of the things that they have said. But on this particular night, just watching this particular match, it's similar to me like the Rock Hogan match almost. The crowd is just such a great compliment to this match. They make this match, not that it wasn't good. It was good. It's good just from like a work rate standpoint. It really is. But the crowd just elevates it so much. I mean, this is awesome. I mean, this is a blast. Even rewatching it now with much more of like I'm looking for a work rate, with based on what we see week in and week out. This is damn good, Darren. This was the night that made the Warrior, and this was a great night for Hogan. We even heard Jesse kind of at the end mentioning, when you get Jesse to go like babyface for a second or two, you've really done a good job.
Yeah, no question about it. Everything you said is completely accurate. The match starts in a good way. The test of strength, feeling each other out, the two shoves, the Greco-Roman thing. I love the spot where he slams the Warrior and the Warrior pops back up and Hogan's like shell-shocked by it. And the back and forth with the crowd. One of the things I wanted to try to pick up on is whose corner were the majority of the people in? Mm-hmm. And I think it was pretty mixed. It was hard to tell. They both had their moments throughout the match. But when the Warrior gets Hogan up for the slam, I think that's the moment where you kind of see the crowd shift.
Yep.
And I feel that that's the moment where Warrior becomes more of the guy that they want to see win the match. And Jesse's phenomenal during that spot. There's a spot where Hogan, where Warrior gets him down and Jesse's going, who would have ever thought? Like with Hogan, being overpowered. The stuff with the injury, not an injury, not an early injury, can't end like this. It's just great commentary. Hogan selling the knee, the back and forth of the match, the false finishes are fantastic. Whoever scripted the finish to that match, where you get Warrior hits his finish, Hogan kicks out, pokes up, you think you're getting the leg, holy crap, Hogan's actually going to win, misses it, Warrior hits the splash, and he gets him just before he's able to kick out. I mean, it's booked perfectly. You could not have scripted this to come out any better. The 98 match, I mean, forget about being past their prime. WCW didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
That stupid flashback bang thing that blew up in Hogan's face and singed his own eyebrow off. I mean, that's a match that I pretend like never happened. But this is everything you could have hoped for and more from two guys who really, couldn't do much in the ring. And, Warrior goes through a stretch now between this match, the feud with Rude,
Macho.
The match at WrestleMania 7, the match at SummerSlam 92. He actually has really good matches for a guy that don't really work.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. And you do get a bit of a stretch here, but, I mean, this is just everything you could have hoped for. And you get the big pop when they hit the 3 and Warrior wins it. And, Warriors won the title. It's one of those moments that will live forever. And I remember as a kid jumping up and down, so excited, it was just really cool to go back and watch it and dive back in like the 6-year-old kid watching it for the first time.
Darren, I agree with everything you just said, except you left out the guy most responsible for making this match as great as it was.
Pat Patterson.
Thank you, Pat Patterson.
Yep. Yeah.
This is his masterstroke. And for a guy that has been around the business for as long as Pat Patterson has, in every capacity in which he's been around it, this is his high point. This is someone telling him, okay, we're going to give you a guy that is the most over wrestler in the United States, maybe the world, except he can't work. And we're going to put him up against this big, muscle-bound, roided-up dude with face paint and tassels that has never really had to work a match longer than 5 minutes, with the exception of the Rick Rude storyline. Good luck. Pat Patterson, I'm envisioning, channeled Barney Stinson 15 years before How I Met Your Mother was a thing and said, challenge accepted. Hulk Hogan could work. Dirty little secret. Look at his matches in Japan. Nobody is ever going to turn him into Okada or Omega or Tanahashi. His work in Japan, when they are concentrating on in-ring technique, doesn't suck. And this, when he wanted to, could work as well. It was just a tremendous job by Pat Patterson to be able to channel every good thing that those two guys brought to the table and hide all their weaknesses. Because if you look really closely mid-match, it sure looks like Warrior's completely blown up. He has some trouble getting Hogan up for the slam. He does hit it, but it's not pretty. This is as good a match as anybody could have expected between these two. Warrior gets the coronation. Of course, it wasn't a whole heck of a lot of a coronation, given everything that happened in the 9 months after that. And if you listen to Hogan talk about what happened after the match, he recalls, and again, this is Hogan talking, so consider the source. He recalls 60-some-odd thousand people looking at Hogan leaving the ring instead of the champ with the belts, which I don't think was particularly accurate because there was value in Warrior as the top guy. The problem was, rehashing something we talked about right at the top, there were no top heels for Warrior to work with, and he really suffered as a result of that. This was the match that made the Ultimate Warrior, and it's a match that for a while afterwards, I'm sure Vince McMahon wished he hadn't booked.
This was in an era too. I think what and just kind of thinking about it now after you both said it, and Darren, you mentioned the run that Warrior had. This was like And Hogan's run of best matches all were in about a 3 or 4 year span too, right here. You know, the Andre match, which again this match is much better work rate than the Andre match by far, but it's a spectacle. And then he had the Savage match, which was one of Hogan's best matches at WrestleMania 5. So we're in an era where, you know, Hogan just puts up, you know, 3 pretty solid matches in like a 3-4 year, which again, as Andrew said, it wasn't really what he was asked for. It wasn't what either of these guys were asked for in the WWF. They really weren't. They were such dominant characters that there were only a few people that you could set up that maybe you could even like legitimately have a back and forth match that was believable with them. It just hit everything perfect. It was the perfect timing, everything. Unfortunately, we didn't get a Warrior Perfect or a Warrior Savage feud immediately after that. Maybe he would have had a little better run. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't. But on this night, this was great. And Darren, I love hearing back when Warrior came back to the WWF, WWE in 2014, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Vince was talking about how after this after the show they couldn't find the Warrior. They were looking all over. And he's like hiding in the back room somewhere, and he's like crying. He's like so happy. It was like the greatest moment of his life. He had a very unique relationship with Vince, like almost like a father type figure. And he was like so ecstatic that this company was ready to put the ball behind him and run with it. And this was just like, this was the best night I think the Savage Warrior match is better, and I like it probably a little bit more, but this night was the best night for Warrior and is like my favorite Warrior night, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing about Warrior, the character, if you think about it, and you think about how wrestling kind of transformed over time, the window for a character like this was not very big.
Yep.
Because once you get past 92, 93, an Ultimate Warrior type character doesn't really fit what's going on in professional wrestling. It's a little over the top, a little too much. And we saw that in WWE as they tried to introduce these weird characters moving forward.
I mean, it was too much with Hogan even. Hogan was getting booed, at the end of his run. Like the superhero kind of guy was over, and that's why like it was more of just a good in-ring worker. It was a perfect time for Brett to kind of take the mantle, because we needed someone like that. But that's a great point. He wouldn't have had that kind of longevity, I don't think, ever really.
No, it's the kind of thing that you're going to get some monster pops, but I don't think you can drag it out. And if you remember, they tried to bring him back in 96, which was kind of strange. It was out of nowhere. He had that match with Triple H at WrestleMania.
He has a feud with like Lawler, and like Goldust.
But here's the proof. So Warrior realized at that time that the Ultimate Warrior of 1989 to 1992 is not going to go over in 1996. And he comes out on Monday Night Raw with a hat on, with the hair in a ponytail, thinking, okay, this is what wrestling is. And that's just not going to work for that character. And when he went back to WCW, same thing. It was perfect it was the right person at the right place at the right time, but it was never going to last very long because of the substance of the character. And I wish his title run would have been better. I wish there would have been more heels. Could have worked with Perfect, Savage. I mean, maybe if you work with him sooner, although the sell-off at WrestleMania 7 was phenomenal.
Great.
But it's just, you do wish you could have gotten more, obviously, out of that title run than you got.
I'll expound on Darren's point because you mentioned that the substance of the character wouldn't have worked a couple of years later. There were a lot of substances that character was built on that would not have worked during that time either. Yeah. He would have stuck out like an absolute sore thumb. Now, you could have done certain things with him. I argue you could have built him almost in a way like The Undertaker, where you build up a mid-card monster heel type. You go, oh my God, who's going to stop this guy? And then instead of hearing the gong, you hear the dun 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 dun. Dun. You do that. Now, there are ways that I think they could have used him, but as a tippy top guy, the way he was in the early 90s, no, that wouldn't have worked. WCW found that out the hard way when they brought him in. I was intrigued at the time because I was born in 1988. Warrior's initial WWF stuff was completely lost on me. So he comes in, and I'm immediately looking like, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah.
And before he even says a word, the entire arena is just captivated. If you watch that segment on YouTube, the first 6 minutes of that segment, right up until Warrior says, welcome to the reappearance, is great stuff. And I will not let anyone tell me otherwise on that. The problem is the segment went on with Warrior talking for another 10 minutes.
And it made no sense.
Yeah.
The key with Warrior at that point was always less is more. And they brought him back in to do the thing with Hogan. Believe what you want from a political standpoint as far as Hogan, quote unquote, getting his win back. I think there was more they could have done with that character. I mean, Goldberg Warrior would have been a spectacle.
Well, that's the one I was just going to mention. That's who he reminds me the most of. Is Goldberg. Yep. Because it's someone who has a window where they're a huge flash, and I'm not even going to say like a flash in the pan, because when we talk about like all time, like Ultimate Warrior, his run and his popularity for a couple year spurt is up there with some of the all time greats. He feels a lot like Goldberg, right? Limited in the ring, the crowd loves him, but he can't really go long, and like not really like a promo guy. Goldberg's best promos have been actually since he's come back. So that was I'm glad you mentioned that. That's kind of who I was thinking, Andrew.
Yep, you can think Goldberg. You can think to a certain extent Lesnar, although Lesnar was a freak of nature who picked pro wrestling up about as quick as anybody not named Kurt Angle. But it's a similar time span, the whole being really over for a really short period of time and then leaving. Those are the comparisons that you draw to. And I think there would have been money in him in the mid-90s as a spectacle guy. They were setting up an Warrior Jake Roberts feud when Warrior got popped for whatever he got popped for in 92. You could have done Warrior Undertaker. That would have done pretty good business. There were ways they could have used him that unfortunately history did not allow us to see. For this moment in time, though, and this seems like a fitting way in which to end things, this was Warrior's night. This was his coronation. And to anybody that wants to bash the Ultimate Warrior or people who like the Ultimate Warrior saying he couldn't work, watch this match. Watch the match with Savage. Watch his matches with Rick Rude, especially at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental title. I think it was 89.
Yep.
The guy could work. It took a certain set of instances and the stars aligning for him to work, but you could get an incredibly memorable match out of him in the right setting. And with that look at that time period, that was enough for Vince to pull the trigger.
Darren, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just one of my favorite WrestleManias as a Warrior fan. One thing I noticed, I never really realized it before. The hotel rooms in the Sky Dome back then, they're blacked out. I never realized it.
Wow.
If you go back and watch, there is shades and curtains pulled down over the hotel windows in the back of the Sky Dome. So I guess those people can't see what's happening. Which is
no freebies. No freebies.
Yeah, no freebies. No freebies. Forget the 200 and change you're paying for the room. No freebies, So I did notice that one thing. But, yeah, it is – the one thing I note is you go from the big spectacle here to, WrestleMania 7 not being able to sell out the stadium, to then going back to the big venue in 8. And then they don't really do a big venue in terms of size again for a while.
Yeah, for a long time.
For a long time. And, it's kind of odd, and I don't know exactly what the reasoning was, why they couldn't sell those tickets. But, like, WrestleMania 9 was in a makeshift, outdoor arena in Vegas. 10 was at the Garden, 20,000 people. So this and WrestleMania 8 are the last big stadium things. But I'll tell you what, if you go back and you watch the first 10 Manias, there is something to be said how 3, 6, and 8 just seem to stand out more just because of the size of the event.
Absolutely.
And it just feels like a bigger moment. It feels larger in terms of importance, and it just feels like a bigger spectacle because of that.
Fellas,
agreed
go ahead, Andrew.
there.
Go ahead.
And just really quick before we go, can we please do WrestleMania 8 next? That's
Yes.
the one I voted
Yep.
for in the poll, and it's one of my favorites.
Yes, we're gonna do. I think our next two 8, and then we'll get to 14. I think that's the
Cool.
other one that you wanted to do. So let's plan on those two. We'll talk next
Flair
week.
never happened.
Yeah, we could do an entire show just on the match that didn't happen at WrestleMania 8. Good call, Darren. And you know what Hulk Hogan would have been in that match? You know what he would have been? He would have been a big guy who could move.
We'll definitely have to get in one day too. We'll hit back, I'm sure, to Royal Rumble '92 because that'll be a good one for all the Heenan and Flair
New
stuff
York,
too.
baby.
So awesome. Let's plan on hooking up next week, and we will talk WrestleMania 8. I'll let all the folks know early, so if they want to rewatch and get all set up. Thank you very much. Give me your cheap plugs real quick before I let you go, Darren, and then Andrew.
Sure. Twitter, at the Track 7. We do horse racing. We do wrestling. You know, when we have sports coming on, we do fantasy sports as well. We have a lot of fun. And I always am happy to interact with anybody and have a little back and forth, too. So I never ignore tweets if I could avoid it. So check me out there at the Track 7.
At Andrew Champagne on Twitter. Also, the Champagne and JD video podcast.
Looking really good, man.
Thank you very much. I'm actually just getting set to record this week's edition right now. We've got Megan Devine coming on. We're going to talk a little bit of Australia racing. We're in the process of starting to roll out a new feature with guests in there, so don't be surprised if you hear from us on that. But at any rate, if you've had the chance to tune in so far and you like what you hear, thank you very much. Hopefully there's more coming. But in the meantime, always happy to come here on Thursday nights in this crazy world of ours. It's really nice to have something to look forward to. So, Gino, I can't speak for Darren, and I'm not sure he would want me to, but thank you very much.
This has been fun. It really has been. So enjoy the rest of your evening, fellas. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week where we talk some WrestleMania 8.
Take it easy.
That's Aaron. I was combining Andrew and Darren. You see what I did there? That's what happens at the end of 2 hours and 7 minutes.
It beats Deirdre. It beats Deirdre with a stick.
Aaron, Andrew Champagne, Darren Zocali. We'll talk WrestleMania 8 with them next week. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to close out That's What G Said in just a moment. A big thank you to Andrew. A big thank you to Darren. We were having a lot of fun with these recaps. So if you're following along and watching with us and you want to do some homework and keep up over the next couple weeks, we're going to be recapping WrestleMania 8 from 1992. And then with Jason Beam and Danny Kovaloff, we're going to recap SummerSlam from that very same year. So actually, that's kind of cool. I'll make sure we do those back-to-back because there'll probably be a lot of similarities in those two shows. So thanks to tuning in again, folks. If you can, give us a like, a subscribe, a rating, and review. If you're on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, anywhere that you get your podcast. Joey Cleveland, let's close him out with the music, my friend.